Hi everybody. It's Lori and Lawrence and Jonathan and Kristen back for another episode 11 of This Week in Flat Earth. And we thank you for joining us live when the show is over in approximately 3 hours, because that's how long we seem to always talk. It will archive and then you can watch it again later if you can't watch the whole thing. So thank you for coming back. And welcome everyone, and welcome you guys to the show. And we're going to start off this week's show by talking about some of the sort of dramatic events that happened this week. A couple of them happened across YouTube. A couple of them happened in some of the Facebook groups. But one of the things we were just talking about pre-show was that a flat earther who has a YouTube channel called Gypsy Girl came out this week, a few days ago, with a video that she was purporting that the world is upside down, or the map is upside down or inside out, and that the Antarctica is the center of an azimuthal equidistant type map, and that then she went on to say that Greenland was non-existent, or perhaps then she said maybe Australia is actually Greenland, and made quite a few assumptions. And when Lawrence found the video, he posted it in Flat Earth Conspiracy Facebook group and asked those, is she crazy? What's going on, or or not? What do you guys think? So there was quite a long debate about it, but it was quite clear that you can't just come out and say things like Greenland doesn't exist, because when you do that, then what happens to all the people who actually live in Greenland? And it's not very hard to go online and look up the names of towns and cities and postal zip codes and businesses and hotels and airlines and all kinds of other things that actually do exist in Greenland. So this is an exercise. We're not going to talk about it just so that we can beat up on the Gypsy Girl, because that's not the intention. The intention is to talk about when people make these kinds of wild assumptions or wild theories and don't take the time to properly do the research and do their homework and find that seems like that might be interesting, but then in reality it's this way. So you can't just make reality fit your assumption. You have to make your assumption fit reality. So I want everybody to talk about, if you guys saw it. I know Lawrence saw it. Jonathan, I don't think saw it. I don't know if Kristen did. I'm pretty sure she did. And this is what we're going to be facing in the flat Earth over the coming year, is these kinds of assumptions that people need to jump in there and, I got to be the first one to put this theory out there so that I can claim it, and so on. Maybe that's their idea, maybe it's not. I have no idea why someone would want to jump the gun so much, because now Gypsy Girl's taken the video down and seems to have disappeared off of Facebook totally. I mean, her account's gone. So that was never Lawrence's intention by posting the video. If it can't stand up to scrutiny from inside a closed group of flat earthers, the public can't see what's inside this group, then something's amiss there. So Lawrence, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, when I watched it, I was looking at her body language, and she looked quite hyper. She was almost as though she was like under some kind of mind control, or she was definitely unhinged with her enthusiasm, and she kept repeating herself. So yeah, she says Greenland doesn't exist. Greenland could be Australia. Look, she says, it's a similar shape to Australia. It could be Australia. I mean, and then she's saying that the Arctic is really Antarctic. And then the other thing she picked up on was, I live in Florida. It's so hot here in Florida. We've got to be further south. They're lying to us where Florida is on the globe. So my immediate thought on that is, well, if Florida is further south, then that means everything beneath Florida would also be further south to maintain the distance. And the places on the equator would be further south, and they'd end up being cooler. And the things above Florida, well, they'd also have to come down to maintain their distance. It's just complete, utter hogwash that she's coming out with. But the real eye-opener for me, because I look at the comments on these videos, and I think it had about 700 or 800 views, and it had got 100 thumbs up and about 10 thumbs down. Well, 11 by the time I'd got onto it. 100 thumbs up, and two of the people who thumbed it up were balls-out physics guy, Brian Mullen, Mr. Sensible, educated physics guy, giving her a thumbs up for a whole heap of steaming shit. And who else give it a thumbs up, saying it was a fabulous video? Good old Patricia Steer. So she's obviously looking to encourage all the crazies to bring more discredit to Flat Earth and, keep all the sensible voices to one side. Just beggars belief that you get 100 thumbs up for such a total nonsensical video. And it's one after the other now. Tiger Dan, go back to Gypsy Yule if you want. Tiger Dan completely turned everything upside down on his head, debunking all his own videos that he's done, but he's not debunking any of the main points. They're just side issues, and nothing that's actually, like curvature or anything like that. He's just debunking his own stuff, and he's on point 3, but he's already told us he's got 10 coming out, 10 videos coming out, which is presumably going to end up saying, well, it's a ball, really. If you look at it, it's a ball. But that's obviously been pre-planned. And I think he's, there's a lot of talk going out now that most of the big hitting ones getting large audiences on YouTubes and what have you that came out, early last year, these people are agents, and they were brought in to build up a following. And now what they've decided to do is to start turning on each other, discrediting each other, in the hope that everybody will think, oh, fuck it, Flat Earth's a mess, it's disintegrating. And as Tiger Dan did in his most recent video, he was showing all these buildings exploding, saying, Flat Earth is dead in the water if you haven't got a map. That's how it's going, and there's going to be a lot more of it by the sound of it.
Well, one thing I would say is we do have a map, and there are issues with it, but the globe Earth has a map, and there's issues with that. We all know the issues with the Mercator projection. It's a cylindrical conformal map. I've probably said that 6 trillion times, but it is. So I don't understand why flat earthers are supposed to be held to a higher standard in terms of cartography than all of science and cartography for the last 500 years or so, assuming that it's a globe. So we don't have any accurate representation of the face of the Earth. As far as I can tell, that includes the Mercator projection, the Peters projection, the azimuthal equidistant, the Gleasons. I mean, they're all just representations of relative distances based on latitude and longitude lines, which are simply imaginary lines. And so, again, I just don't see why we should be held to a higher standard in map making when the globe isn't even an accurate representation of the globe if it was a globe. So I didn't see the video from Gypsy Girl. In fact, the name rings a bell. I probably saw some of her stuff a while ago, and it obviously didn't make much of an impression on me because I didn't continue watching her stuff. But at the end of the day, people do tend to get they'll think they've found something and they get excited about it, or maybe a bit nutty about it. I don't know. Didn't see the video, but that happens. I think we need to be careful about being really quick to jump on board and start, spouting out information that we haven't checked or verified or even thought whether or not it was realistic. One issue I have with the Antarctic being in the center is the North Star. If you head north towards the North Star, you wind up going north towards the North Pole, right? So to say that that's actually south, well, then, okay, then if that's south, then north is south, right? If south is north, then north is south, and then you've got the, it's just whatever. But, yeah, I didn't see that video. I've obviously, the last thing I've watched of Tiger Dan's was the one where he was basically calling all flat earthers liars who say that the Antarctica is on the outside. And I actually sort of did a little bit of an apology to him in this video that I'm working on, because I don't think we need to be pitted against each other. But he commented on one of our shows, not here, but one of my other shows, that we were we had this troll fake spaceman in face. He's one of fake spaceman in space. He's got 15, 20 different YouTube accounts, and he just trolls. But we told the guy, if you really have issues you want to debate, come on the show. And then Tiger Dan called us liars for that. And then he basically came flat out and called Jaron a liar. And so, if you're going to come out saying and calling people liars, then you're going to face repercussions. Maybe you should have maybe it's better to approach people privately about that sort of thing first and talk it out. I mean, I just don't understand why we have to be at each other's throats. We have to be in conflict just because some of these people seem to be self-destructing. I don't know.
Well, that's where it's kind of important to talk about it, because there's always going to be a group of people inside of any movement who are, I call them the kumbaya people. Can't we just get along? Why is everybody being so dramatic? Can't we just talk it out and be nice and not be mean and so on? We can try, but I was watching a video last night. I was telling Lawrence about this pre-show. I was watching one, I guess it was the latest Star Gods video, and he made some comments about back in the 60s when the anti-war movement started, the anti-Vietnam War started, and it was basically the yippies on college campuses and going to Washington, D.C. and protesting. And the yippies, not to be confused with the hippies, for those that are too young to have been around then or to have taken the time to study it, the yippies were people who were, the dissidents. They were anti-war, anti-government, anti-everything that was establishment. And they were intent on bringing down the man. I mean, the man was anybody who was in organized control government. And then along came Laurel Canyon, and they bred into a lot of the young generation and when I mean bred, I mean inserted into a lot of the young generation to create the hippie movement, the sex, love, rock and roll, do drugs, peace man, peace, and all that, and to basically annihilate the yippies and to distract from the yippie movement because it was just a little bit too anarchy oriented for the control freaks. So one of the things that I see happening is, Star Gods made a point of it, and I agree with him. There's only so much of the, can't we all get along, peace, love, and rock and roll, and Galactic Federation of Light, before then there's no passion in the movement. There's no, then it does become a cult. Then it does become an echo chamber. And people are just satisfied with, hey, man, isn't it just cool that we're flat? Do we have to really, what do you want to do with it or about it or whatever? So there has to remain a certain amount of voices that are a little bit strident, a little bit astringent, that maybe make people uncomfortable enough to keep them on the edge of their seat or keep them on their toes, because this movement is not about just proving the earth is flat. That's just the beginning. And we've talked about this ad nauseum in this show about the reason why the flat earth is so important to most of us who have been in it for a long time. That the purpose is to stop the control system and to bring down the liars. I mean, why are they lying, and what benefit is is it giving them, and so on and so on. We've talked about that a lot. So yeah, I think it would be awesome to be all kumbaya and everything, but that's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen, and nor should it, in my opinion. Now, I'm a non-kumbaya type girl. So, Kristen, we haven't heard from you yet. Do you have something you want to jump in here on this early part with regards to what people are putting out there?
Hey there, everybody. How's it going?
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Kristen.
Happy Sunday. Hey there, Lawrence. So yeah, the Gypsy Girl video was interesting. I've only watched a couple of her videos, and I had no opinion about her. She seemed funny and intense. That's about as far as I got with it. Watching one video prior to this latest one, and seeing this, I just have to say I didn't see how she was actually qualifying her statements the way she described it. I heard her say she did a lot of research and lost a lot of sleep, and it seemed focused on having poured over this one book that I've come to catch on, I guess, slowly here is quickly, not delving into it yet, is related to the Hollow Earth theory. And so, she showed how this, Antarctica very crudely could fit, in the shape of the other continents surrounding what we think of as the Arctic. So, but it didn't look plausible. None of it looked plausible. And yeah, to dismiss Greenland is just out there. Like, actually, Lawrence has not stumbled, but dug in this week on some of this about Greenland, because, I've been raising the issue about Greenland in particular when I'm trying to talk about that we need to look at this Mercator map again. Why is Google using it? How does that work? How does that make sense? And, when Greenland is supposed to be 14 times smaller than Africa, and yet it appears roughly the same size, and you zoom in and it doesn't get smaller. So how does Greenland just disappear all of a sudden? Because, really, when logic leaves the argument, that's where we get into trouble. So we have, as you astutely pointed out in your own way of saying it, Lori, and, you can't just get rid of Greenland and say, and no, Australia is not the same shape at all. So I didn't get that point either, that don't they look alike, she said. I'm going, no, actually no. Sorry. I'm sorry, because no, your show is not about bashing people. It's kind of a bummer to hear that said sometimes. That's come up a little bit, right, that you've had to address people's comments in that regard, right? And I know that the two of you have a way of being frank, okay, that I appreciate. I appreciate that type of honesty from people. It's the people that are going to just never be honest with you have to worry about. Okay, so it's not about bashing people. It's about calling them out in truth about their actions and questioning them and saying, this doesn't sit well and we need to discuss it. So, I think you guys have done us a service in all of that, and ringing the bells that needed to be rung, and I'm here for the same reason. I came on the show because, Lawrence said, anybody wants to come on and talk about the map, great. And that is why I first, said that I'd be willing to join you, right? And I was happy that you agreed to let me do it. This is why I'm here, and mainly, and I'm happy to talk about what happens week to week and these things. I think the whole premise of your show is excellent, but it's certainly not about gossip. It's not about bashing, and we are doing good work here, and it's just the conversation that needs to happen. If Lawrence had not pushed forward this map conversation, we might still be in this land of assumption, and I think we owe him all a lot that he's actually taken this on and changed the conversation focus from where it was to now what it is and what it needed to be. Really, frankly, I never got into the flights thing as a proof of the flat earth, because it never felt resolved to me, and I needed to see other people figure it out, because that was one track of research I wasn't personally ready to take on myself, right? And I thought, well, I'll let other more qualified people figure it out and get to the bottom of it than myself, right? And so here we are all these months later, and it's finally coming to light that this all connects to the issues with the flights that were never resolved, right? And so, like I pointed out last week, we were going to find out very quickly if Tiger Dan was telling the truth or not. And we've already seen a video this week. I don't know if all of you have seen it. Somebody, and I don't know offhand the name of the channel. It's a new channel. I regret to not have the name ready to tell you, but it was sent to me yesterday, and this guy broke it down where he's looked into it in depth, and there's no way these flights going straight over Antarctica are real, that Tiger Dan claims are real. And so it would seem it's already been, you know, already pointed out as overly suspect. We can't just say, okay, yeah, Tiger Dan had it right. No, of course we were going to confirm this one way or the other. And so this isn't working out. The guy goes in depth talking about Qantas Airlines, what they claim about the capacity of their planes in terms of how much fuel they can carry, how long a flight they can do. And then this other airlines that's honest, that, or seemingly more honest, to say that a similar type of airplane can't make that flight, and therefore would have to have a stopover somewhere to refuel. If I followed that roughly correctly, because I would have to listen to it again to get all the details, but that was the gist of it. So there's something really fishy about the Qantas Airlines being the one that claims to make this nonstop thing, and it's not panning out. It's not checking out so far. But maybe we need to do a few more steps to confirm it, have more people look into it, because we can't take, I guess, one guy's video as the gospel on anything, can we? This is why we're all in this together.
Because you know what? It's a great big world. I mean, it is big. Whether it's in the shape of a circle where or a sphere where they say, well, that's why you can't see around it because it's so big. Oh, it's big flat too. I mean, it's big. So everybody who lives everywhere anywhere can't be everywhere. And so we have to rely on other people who live in other places to tell us the truth about where they live and what it's like where they live, to compare the information that we get from the government or NGOs or whatever, that to use it to cross-reference. And so with regards to the mapping, I've taken a lot of flack for the past few weeks since I sort of got behind Lawrence, and I've been behind him all the way through, only for the purpose of is I'm one of those kind of people that if I see something that needs to be talked about, and thank you for calling it frank. Let's be frank. Frankness can be just being a shithead too. So I try to be as diplomatic with my frankness as I possibly can. But at some point, if it comes to the point where being diplomatic needs to just be thrown out the window and just blatant honesty is required, then there you go. But when Lawrence started talking about the different maps, I'll give you another example of somebody switching maps. When I first listened to Mark Sargent, 8-9 months ago, whenever he first came out with his clues videos, which I want to go over a couple of things that that sort of dawned on me about that a little while ago. He was using the Orlando Ferguson type map to purport the flat Earth. You can look that up online. Just type in Orlando Ferguson map projection, and you will see that map that has sort of looks like a roulette table. It's high in the middle and dips down sort of concave and then goes up around the outside edge. I think that's where this 2-mile high ice wall idea came from. But it's a circular map set inside of a square. But suddenly, and without explanation and without changing gears or saying why, he suddenly starts using the AE map, the azimuthal equidistant map, that has the ice, Arctic, Antarctic ice all the way around the outside, but it's not square. It's just a circle with that jaggedy ice edge. But still, the 2-mile high ice thing seemed to remain, and then a dome got set down on top of it. So maybe that's why he switched, was because his enclosed world dome concept fit nicely over the AE map, where it didn't quite have that much explanation for what's outside of the dome, which he didn't seem to want to talk about ever, over the Orlando Ferguson map. So for any of us to switch gears is perfectly fine, and I'm not saying that's not okay. But then you should really, if you are someone who has a magnitude of personality within the movement, as Mark Sargent has or did or whatever, then it is, to me, it's important to explain your actions and why you're switching gears. And I think Lawrence has done a great job of explaining why he switched gears with not being happy with the AE map, and seems to be stuck on the Mercator map, and for now, and I'm not sure he's going to stay there, but he keeps researching. But that's the point. He keeps researching. A whole lot of other people are just to go, oh, well, that looks good, so I'm just going to stay right there. Would you agree with that, Jonathan?
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think it's important that we do, sort of try to think outside of the box and get rid of a lot of the assumptions that we have in terms of making maps using the latitude and longitude lines, which are all based on solar and astronomical calculations. That's it. So there's issues with that, but in terms of the Mark Sargent proof involving the airline flights, I thought that was interesting. But, I figured that would be something that's easily either verified or easily debunked. And since it's allegedly so easy to debunk, then, that's an issue. But when you actually try to book one of these flights, or if you actually try to track one of these flights that supposedly goes across the Antarctic, it seems like they're not being 100% honest, which makes a lot of sense in the conventional flat Earth model. But, one of the things that really pushed me over the fence in this topic was the flight durations, east to west, west to east, same time. So that was something that I realized even when I was 10 or 11, it didn't work in the spinning globe model, and that's a very important point. But now, let's just say hypothetically, people are flying over the Antarctic from South America to Australia, which I don't think they are, but if they are, then you've debunked that map, or you've debunked that model. It doesn't mean the Earth is a globe, but what you've also done is you put in the mind that anybody saying, well, what about the airline flights? They're going to go to that Mark Sargent argument as opposed to the east-west flight times argument, which actually is proof that the world is stationary. So, we just need to be careful about red herring arguments either way. Mark Sargent has done a lot of work. He's done a lot of radio shows. I'm not a big fan of his by any means. I did see one show that I really liked where he had a valve and gasket specialist on. He was talking about the International Space Station. But other than that, maybe I'll save up some money and go book that flight. But until then, what do we have to go with? Well, one of the things that I go back to, and we sort of mentioned this last week, and maybe you did some further research, Lawrence, but Robotham, he was looking at old southern excursions, southern voyages, and he did a pretty good job of showing that the distance from the southern tip of South America to New Zealand would be less than 8,000 miles. Even going the long way around, going west from South America, but going around that latitude curve, it would still only be about less than 8,000 miles, which is totally doable in a modern plane going 500 or 550 miles an hour within 13 to 16 hours. So I just don't see it being that big of an issue, and just because you fly over ice on the way doesn't mean that was Antarctica. So, people see ice out of an airplane window and we're just supposed to automatically assume that that's Antarctica. I think that's also naive. So, at the end of the day, it's definitely not a spinning globe. And to have people like Tiger Dan that I've referred to, and people like Gypsy Girl, basically, coming out with stuff that's trying to discredit this, it raises an eyebrow for me, for sure.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, John, because that's been the whole contention about the flights, is particularly the Santiago, Chile to Sydney, Australia. whichever way you try and make it work on the AE map, it just doesn't work. You have to move Australia closer, and then when you do that, all the other ones fall out of sync. And the only map it will work on, and it does come out to the correct distance, is on the Mercator map. If you fly east from Australia, it just about comes out at the same distance. So, and lots of people are talking about this now. Even allegedly, Dave, he put a comment on his Facebook. So it is slowly getting more interest.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because I believe Mercator was probably a flat earther.
Yeah, and just going back to the airline routes, because I was sort of involved with that at an early stage, and I think all these crazy routes in the southern hemisphere. So when you get things like Cape Town to Auckland, and it's going up via Dubai and then coming down to places in Australia, then before it gets to New Zealand, I think it's purely economics, because they need to fill the plane up. And Mark Sargent was saying, well, this doesn't happen in the northern hemisphere. Well, it actually does, because I did some research today. If you look at the distance between London and Orlando, it's 4,334 miles, and London to Anchorage, which on the map looks like nearly twice as far, it's only 150 miles further on flight map, which is a bit of a conundrum. So then I looked at the flights on it, and there's no direct flights from Anchorage to London. There are two stops. A typical one would go London to Orlando, and would go to Denver, and then Denver to Chicago, and Chicago to Heathrow, which was coming out at 7,260 miles, which is like some 3,000 miles further than what it would be. As the crow flies. So the reason they're probably doing that is they're not picking up enough passengers in Anchorage to justify a non-stop flight, and that's probably exactly what's happening in the southern hemisphere. So they do look crazy, but it makes monetary sense to have a full plane going a bit further than an empty plane, just taking off with a quarter of a plane and losing money.
I have something I want to share.
And there are other ones. I looked at flights from London to Los Angeles, and surprisingly, there are some planes going from London. They fly east first. One goes to Paris, so that's going away from Los Angeles, and then he goes to Los Angeles. Another one goes from London to Rome, of all places, and then goes to Los Angeles. So they're obviously going there because they know they can fill the plane up and make economic sense. So the non-stops is not an exclusivity of the North. They're, or the multi-stops, they're happening in the Northern Hemisphere as well. But obviously not as much in the South, because they've got more traffic, and in many cases they can actually fill the plane up, and they don't need to go on all these detailed, getting sidetracked to go elsewhere to fill the plane up.
Did you notice how many people were flying from Alaska to London? Was it 12,000 a week, more or less?
I didn't see anything on the traffic. I did go and have a look at the departure list in Alaska, just to see where the planes were going, and some were going to Hong Kong. Hong Kong one's quite interesting, because it flies down to the west coast, places like Seattle. And then it'll go from Seattle to Vancouver, and then from Vancouver to Hong Kong. So that's like a 3-stop. So there's lots of multi-stops. Even within America, they're not all just going in a single flight. They're going all over the place.
Lawrence, you remember this? Remember this video that you posted this week?
Yeah.
This is another example of
that wasn't my video. That was somebody else's.
Right. It's somebody named Canal JKT channel. But can you see it okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
The arrows are pointing to this guy's ears that he says that
if you look at this, you take a screen capture of it or something, or look at this guy's channel and look at this. It's a 15-second long video, and this is all that it shows is this map. And if you'll look at the way the arrows are pointing, it's a Mercator map. Am I correct? Yes.
Yeah.
Mercator map, but these words down here, this down here says teleport zone on all 4 sides, teleport zone, okay? And he's got these arrows on the corners pointing in, and the arrow at the bottom points up, the arrow at the top points up, and then these arrows here point both west. So it's just interesting that this is the kind of brainstorming people are doing. He's not saying anything. He just shows this map for 15 seconds, and that's the extent of the video. And I think that it's interesting that to use ideas like that just to look at and go, okay, well, I'm thinking he's based that on obviously something supernatural, biblical perhaps, Enochian gate oriented perhaps, but the idea is that I have no problem, and I don't think any of us do, with people freely brainstorming, but he makes no claims. He's just showing you an idea, okay? To me, that's fine. That's actually awesome. It doesn't hurt anybody. It doesn't try to disinform anybody. All it does is just to show you an idea.
Well, I think it may be a little bit misrepresentative, unless I'm missing something big here. But have we ever seen any evidence of people circumnavigating north to south, like starting in the northern hemisphere, going up around the North Pole, down around the other side of the world, and then up around the South Pole, winding up back in the north? It's just never happened, and you'd think that there'd be some explorer with aviation credentials or whatever that would want to do this to be the first, but all we ever see is east to west circumnavigation, which really lends credence to a circular map. A flat map with a.
But yeah. Wait, John. As far as representational, let me show it to you again. Where's the screen share? Okay. Again, look at what he's saying. He's not saying this arrow points up, this arrow at the bottom in so-called Antarctica points up, and this arrow at the top points up, okay? And so what he's saying is, if you went from this side here, west to west, you would come back over here. That's what he's saying.
Right, but what about the arrow?
From the bottom to the top, you would go off the top and you would come back on the bottom.
Right, but you don't.
Some game like that.
Yeah, but you don't though. That's the whole thing with the Mercator.
You don't, but you don't know, because if he's using this concept to say that Antarctica, nobody's been traversed Antarctica and come out the other side to tell of it. No one has crossed over the Arctic and come down the backside, which would bring you through the Pacific Ocean here. Obviously, if you came on a globe, right, you would come down around the Pacific Ocean on the backside and say hello to Hawaii as you went by, or whatever. So what I'm saying is it. How can that be considered irresponsible to put something like that up and make no claim about it? This is what I'm trying to define, I guess. What is making a claim and what is not making a claim? Okay, because Mark Sargent, for example, and I'm using him as an example because he's one of the most prolific speakers on Flat Earth as far as purporting what he believes. I mean, he says, I believe, okay? He doesn't say I know. He says I believe over and over again. So with the enclosed world and the dome over the top and the Truman Show thing and all that. To me, that's irresponsible in comparison to someone and saying that there's no Greenland is irresponsible as a flat earther, then saying something like this looks like a what if, okay? You would have to debunk it. You would have to be able to go to polar circumnavigate the Earth to debunk this.
Yeah, I think we should too. I think somebody should, and if for no other reason than to prove it's a globe and be written down in the history books, and then I can go back to sleep on globe Earth. But
Right.
Until that happens, we can only really sort of go by what I would say what we know, but that's sort of treacherous waters. We can sort of go by what we believe and what we understand to be true based on the evidence that we have. And as far as I can tell, if you go north from the North Pole, you're not going to wind up, down on the bottom of the map in the South Pole. And the only way that really would work is if we were on sort of a tiny little ball, I think. But I mean, I guess anything's possible. But I've looked into concave or hollow Earth or whatever, and there's just too much evidence against it. And most of it's, the same stuff that debunks the globe Earth convex also debunks the concave theory. So. I don't know. It's I wouldn't say that he's being irresponsible by putting that out there. I wouldn't go so far as to say that, and I would have to agree with you that some of the stuff that Sargent and possibly, I didn't see the video from Gypsy Girl, that those sort of things are certainly irresponsible, but as long as you're qualifying certain things by, saying this is what I believe and this is what we can prove, that's important, because there are so many people out there that'll just, like you said, echo chamber, just repeat things because they heard it, and then you have this whole wave of people debunking the flat Earth because Mark Sargent was wrong, and that's just that's not good enough for me.
Well, exactly. And here's the other thing, okay? I truly believe now that John LeBon aside, this is for you. Because John comes on often in the comments and says, you have no proof that there are these agent people, and why would they be doing this, and so on. So this is for you, John, if you're listening. In my opinion now, what it looks like, and if I'm wrong, show me where I'm wrong, but some of the early people that came into the flat Earth and became prolific gangbuster video makers on YouTube, and but mostly on YouTube, not having blogs, not having ornate big deal websites, seem to be the ones messing up the Kumbaya thing. They're the ones that are the fakes seemingly attacking the fakes, which now it's looking more and more clear that that's what's happening, because I have no reason to attack anyone, okay, ever. Calling somebody out is not attacking them. Calling somebody out is, and asking for a better explanation, or asking someone to be more responsible with what information they put out there for what could be considered somewhat gullible new entries into the flat Earth movement, okay? And what I mean by gullible, and I'm using this word loosely because they're using it on the the media is using it on the movement as a whole, calling us gullible. I've seen it in print way too many times now already, that it's imprinting. It's imprinting in the dialogue of those who will be the anti-flat earthers. They're not even globers. They don't even know what they believe, but they just are anti-flat earthers, okay? But it appears to me that people like, Tiger Dan attacking so-and-so. I mean, I remember a few months ago, the character named Joseph Townley, Joseph Climera, attacked all kinds of people, myself included, for arguing against anything that he put out there and saying, well, I don't know, I don't really go for that too much. And it's like, you're an agent, you're a shill. The minute you say no, I'm really not all about that. So that guy's long gone, okay? And then poof, here comes a person like Gypsy Girl who puts out this, what is apparently disinfo video, because it's disinformation. It's not correct. and she was adamant. She said, no, 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 it's not, Greenland doesn't exist. And I have, right on the Facebook page, I left the post there where she said, yes, ma'am, Greenland, no, it doesn't exist. So then poof, she's gone. I mean, her Facebook page is gone, her profile, her videos are gone, and gone, just like Joseph, disappeared out of thin air. And so, to me, this is starting to look like, put two and two together and connect the dots. This is starting to look like people are infiltrating the movement with some craziness, just so they can be used to pit each other against each other and call each other crazy and call I
actually just happened upon some at least anecdotal circumstantial evidence of paid shills. I did it was sort of impromptu to me, show with Jeff Stewart and GeoShifter and a couple other guys a couple days ago. And they put the link to the Google Hangout into the description of the live show. And we had a guy named, I believe he said it was Tim Osmond, who is a suspected paid shill, pop into that Hangout like, I don't know, 30 times with 30 different accounts within 20 minutes and had like a stripper and everything just ready to go for when we had that impromptu debate. And so if you actually think that there's globe Earth proponents sitting around waiting to troll flat Earth shows without any incentive, I mean, again, I hate to use the same analogy over and over, but I don't like baseball. I think it's boring and stupid to watch. It's a little fun to play. I always sucked at it, so it's not my thing. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to go 24 hours a day waiting for, baseball enthusiasts to start ragging on them. That's such a waste of time. And so, the only conclusion I can have as a logical person with a brain is that there's something more to it. Now, can I prove that Tim Osmond is a paid shill? No, I can't prove it. Do I suspect it? Sure. Wait a
minute. I listened to Tim Osmond on a video call with permission on a YouTube video that Adam, what's his last name? I'll think of it in a second. He played the tape with permission from Tim Osmond to having a conversation with Mark Sargent, and he admitted that he has 50 accounts for the purpose of trolling, and he is he's a glober, okay, and he said it straight out on the video that he works to attack a troll strongly at people like Mark Sargent or anybody else who's a flat earther. The guy that was playing the video used to be a flat earther, and he was a big fan of Patricia, apparently, and a friend of hers on Facebook, and a fan of Mark Sargent. And suddenly it dawned on him and his buddy who were sitting around talking that nobody's doing any proofs. Mark Sargent's putting out all of this information, but yet he admittedly doesn't even read his comments on his videos. And he said it actually in this video. I'll put the link to it in the description at the end of the show. I'll have to find the guy's name's Adam somebody. But Tim Osmond straight up is a troll, admits that he's a troll, and admits that he has 50 accounts. The only thing that he doesn't admit to is that he's being paid to be doing that. But anyway, this Adam guy turns around and says that he's no longer a flat earther. He says, I waited for months and months and months for Mark Sargent or somebody to come out with some kind of proof.
But what is he? Is he like this guy, Adam, is an inanimate object where he's not able to do his own experiments?
Well, okay,
right?
Okay, granted. Very, very well said. And I said the same thing myself when I was watching the video. Were you lazy bum? Get out and do your own proofs. If you really want to see it done and have it done, don't wait for somebody else to do it. But his heart's not in it. He doesn't care. He said straight out, I don't care whether the Earth's round or flat or whatever. If you're going to be a flat earther and you're going to say this is the way the Earth is, and this is this is, and he's speaking of Mark Sargent. The whole show is about Mark Sargent. Then prove it, and so now he's not anti-flat Earth. He's just agnostic at this point. He says pretty much.
Well, isn't that exactly what a shill would do, though? They would be a vocal proponent of this movement, and then at some point they would, they wouldn't never put out any proofs. They would just sort of go along for the ride and promote people like Mark Sargent's work, for example. And then they would say, well, this has been debunked, and therefore I'm no longer a flat earther. And that's a perfect story for somebody that stumbles on this topic and says, well, look at Lord Stephen, the regular person named Stephen Christopher. That's another example of, okay, well, they used to be flat earthers, but now they're onto this better thing. And that's exactly what they would do. It's misinformation to muddy the waters, to muddy the debate with disinformation. And your average person that's not going to do the research is just going to throw their hands up in the air and say, well, I can't figure this out. It must be a globe, and go back to sleep. And that's what we're up against, I think. And can't prove it, but I have a hunch.
Well, yeah. I know the Earth is flat, okay? There's a
that I can prove, but what I'm saying I can't prove is that these people are doing this. I've spent the last 7 months of my life proving
that's the trick. That's definitely the tricky part. And at some point, I have the patience of Job. At some point, one of these trolls, paid trolls, is going to trip up or get a conscience or something and admit that there's rooms with them sitting around being handled, blah, blah, blah. And so having each of them have 50 plus accounts. It's like playing 50 bingo cards, okay? I don't know if you've ever played bingo, but I used to go with my grandmother when I was a little girl.
Yeah, I always lose.
Played like 4 or 5 cards, and I was just like in a panic all the time because I never felt like we were keeping up. B9, and I'm looking at all of them, and now the person's already saying E4 or something. I don't know. And imagine being 50 Facebook or YouTube accounts and having them all open, or a bunch of them open, 10 of them at a time, going around hammering comments on people's Facebook groups or YouTube channels or so. This is the first week in weeks that this show opened without 6 automatic thumbs down before it even started. Okay, so I guess they're sleeping this week. I don't know, but I mean, to me, those are trolls. Nobody has a reason to dislike something before it ever even starts. Except Jonathan with baseball and me with football. Same thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can only go so far, Laurie, can't you? At some point, you have to call a spade a spade. And that guy you were talking about, who was talking about Mark Sargent, and he actually was revisiting some of Mark Sargent's interviews with Patricia Steer. And Mark Sargent was talking about Masons and saying he wasn't a Mason, but his grandfather was, and he brought in this Mason's hat that his grandfather had. So I don't know what Mark was doing with it. He says the only thing I'm a member of is the Flat Earth Society, and he flashed his card on the screen, and they did a close-up of it, and he joined in October 2014, which was like 4 months before he had his so-called Jerry Maguire moment. So, your Jerry Maguire moment, that would be when you joined the Flat Earth Society, not 4 months later. So he's got some explaining to do there, Mark Sargent. I think his cover story's starting to crumble a little bit. And the same with others. People are going to start revisiting what people have said and analysing what they say and seeing what it all means.
This guy's name is Adam Moyer, M-O-Y-E-R. Adam, like the original Adam Moyer. And
the thing is, once you get to that situation, then you have to, by association, put all the people that they regularly deal with in the same camp. So Mark Sargent gets in with Patricia Steer. Patricia Steer is associated with David Weiss. These people, in my view, are all there to destroy flat Earth. They'll build up a following, and then they'll turn on others or turn on themselves, and the same as Tiger Dan has done. to try and bring it all down. Because, you know, this time last year, Flat Earth was doing very well on its own. It was growing organically, and people were talking sensibly about it. And then all these new names came in, you know, with friction at the start. You know, he's a shill, he's a shill, he's a shill. Build up their own followings, and now they're turning on themselves. You know, they're pressing the self-destruct button in the hope that the whole thing will come tumbling down, and that's the danger that we're in.
Well, it's like the Sasha Cullen with or what is it, Orphan Red, you know, with Mark Sargent video. I mean, that looked like a self-destruct button to me. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't care if that's her cute little shtick or not. But when I watched it, I mean, I was like, you did that. Oh, you went there with the thing and the thing and all that stuff. You know, what are you people doing? And, you know, Mark Sargent himself is the one who is constantly talking about the hive mind of the internet, the hive mind, who never miss a thing, and then do hand signs that are known Masonic Illuminati signs. Makes no sense whatsoever. So what is this implosion, and what are, you know, how much are we supposed to worry about it or think about it? I, for one, you know, if you guys want to implode, you go ahead, but my only intention is to bring it up.
Well,
so
you know,
other people can have a little bit of sensibility about it and not get all bummed out and everything and thinking that the entire Flat Earth movement is crashing on its head, because it's not. That's not true. That's not what's happening. Characters are assassinating themselves and each other, okay, live on camera, and that's what's happening.
Well, you know, one thing I would disagree with is guilt by association. You know, I think there's good evidence to suggest that Mark Sargent isn't being 100% honest, and anybody that's a card-carrying member of the Flat Earth Society is very questionable in my book, just because we all know what they do. But to say that, therefore, you know, Pat Steer and anyone she associates with is guilty is jumping the gun, because I've actually done a show with Pat Steer, and I've done a show with Pat Steer and David Weiss at the same time. I think Dave has done a lot of good work, and he gets a little bit excited and maybe a little bit passionate about it, but, you know, that's okay. You know, I think his heart's in the right place, and, you know, I don't have any personal problems against Patricia Steer. She's doing her thing and, you know, having guests on the show, and that's what she does. But to say that, you know, therefore I'm a shill because I did a show with David Weiss and Pat Steer, who were, you know, I guess you could say sort of part of the whole Mark Sargent camp. I mean, I guess that's what we're saying. I don't know. But, that, you know, that's just jumping the gun, I think.
No, I wasn't saying that, John. But I mean, I speak to a lot of people.
No, people think that way, so I know I understand what you're saying, and the people that think that way, that is definitely jumping the gun.
Well, in the Facebook circles, that is the general consensus, you know, because we do chat a lot about that, and, you know, the general consensus is these people are thick as thieves and they're in it together.
Well, I would agree. I would agree that most people, if you walk down a line of dedicated flat earthers, whether they've been doing it for 8 or 9 or 10 months, or whether they just came in a few weeks ago and are just now researching it, if you lined them up and you walked down the aisle with a microphone and you said, "So, what do you think? Do you like flat earth drama?" I guarantee you 99% of them would say, "Really, I could do without the drama." Okay? And then you say, "Well, what is the drama?" Well, a few months ago, it was shill this and shill that and agent this and agent that. Even people who wouldn't even be suspected of being a shill or an agent, so to speak, were saying, "Oh, I was called a shill or an agent," just to make themselves more self-important or something, okay? But if you ask the people, they really just want to know about Flat Earth. They want to know about the historical background of it. They want to know about the current proofs that people are witnessing and doing experiments about. They want to understand how it works, as far as, you know, they already know how the globe is explained, how it works. The sun, the moon, the stars, obviously there's some things that are unexplained with flat Earth that are explained with the globe, like how do volcanoes work? How about meteorites and asteroids and whatever, and things flying around that aren't always up there? How come Halley's Comet only comes around every so many years? And so as you progress through your learning curve of flat Earth, you move from aspect to aspect of it, learning about all these different aspects, just like you did when you were in school, learning about meteors and planets and everything else. The problem comes in is when you get distracted with the drama. Oh, so-and-so's in so-and-so's camp, and oh, so-and-so rolled over on so-and-so, and oh, these two are attacking each other, and oh, blah, 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 okay? And then that distracts from the real research efforts and the feel-good moment that you had when you became a flat earther and you realized you weren't living on a ball anymore. So can it be stopped? I actually think it could be stopped, but it's going to take two things. It's going to take ignoring the drama. It's like, no, sorry, we'll talk to the hand. I don't see your drama, okay? And the other thing is going to be, don't follow anybody. Don't become a follower. Don't get in a camp. Don't be in a cult. Don't let your day rise and fall on what someone says about flat Earth, and you'll be fine. Because then you'll be sort of required to be in your own boat, on your own, looking for yourself for proof of the flat Earth. Or not.
Yep. Can I ask John a question? Because I listened to the show with Santos Bonacci the other day, and he was coming out with all sorts of stuff like the 7 layers below, and saying that if you spell atom backwards, it makes the word matter, and then he says matter becomes mother. He was coming out with all sorts of stuff with words that mean this and mean that, which to me was just, he couldn't prove any of it. And I was listening to John, and John seemed to be getting very agitated by Santos Bonacci, and John didn't even stay to the end. I think he was disgusted with it. Either that or he lost his connection, but I was thinking, yeah, John's had enough of this guy. I just wanted to ask John what he made of this Santos Bonacci.
Well, my internet actually went down. I didn't get it back up to the next day, so that was that. Although the thought actually crossed my mind to just pop off of there because, I tried to get the discussion back onto flat Earth, and he's going into these sort of wild etymological fantasies as far as I'm concerned. Etymology is a science, and there's logic and there's history behind it. But to say that, Al Gore invented the algorithm because it says Al Gore in it, I mean, that's just ridiculous, right? And so I'm not trying to rag on Santos Bonacci. I'd actually seen some of his work from a long time ago that was involving the Sestui-KV Act of 1666, and I thought he did a pretty good job of researching it, but it didn't even dawn on me until we did the show that the reason I stopped watching his stuff is because he sort of went out into left field a little bit. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna, let me just get another source of information. And actually, I think it was that turned me away from even digging any deeper into Sestui-KV. So, the way that, and I'm not saying that Santos Bonacci is anything but, a good-hearted man that's trying to, promote this truth his own way. For all I know, that's the case. But at the same time, if we associate ourselves with things that can't be proven or things that just are so outlandish, for example, the 7 layers below, even if that's 100% true, we're never going to prove it. We can only drill 8 miles deep. And so, that's going to be that's only going to hurt our credibility. And to me, our credibility is all we have. And so, no, I didn't hang up on the show. I lost my internet, but it was probably for the better anyway.
Did you catch Santos Bonacci, Laurie?
I did not. I was very busy working all this past week. Excuse me.
Because he's this new age guy that he was talking about, everybody be nice to each other and lovey-dovey and peace and love and all that sort of stuff, which is exactly what you were talking about earlier. So,
that's part of this whole awakening thing that was supposed to have started in 2012. Some people believed that 2012 was supposed to be the end of the world or something, or
1223. Yeah, it was the
12:23,
equinox. Yeah.
there it is. The world was either supposed
Solstice.
to end or it was supposed to begin anew, and that there would be a mass awakening of people, and obviously A didn't happen, and we're 3 years into it, or 4 years into it, and B hasn't happened either. So
Actually, I think there has been an awakening in the
well, there
last
has been an
3 or 4
awakening,
years.
but
Yeah.
it isn't all namaste and namaste and all that stuff. It's there's, for those that are awake and enlightened, they would do well to stick to their own kind, because going out in the den of lions is not going to behoove you very well, because those lions are still out there.
Just to clarify, Santos Bonacci didn't say Al Gore invented the algorithm, but that it's those sort of leaps that he was making. So just to clarify,
No,
I don't want to
got you.
Okay.
Because he was busy inventing the internet. And
Right. Yeah, Al Gore was right.
To invent algorithm.
You know, the way that I look at it is if we're going to have a major paradigm shift, which we're having, apparently there's going to be some turmoil, and you're also going to have this whole Hegelian dialectic forced upon us, and that's what they're doing. It seems like there's this division that we have to sort of, subscribe to one camp or another, and then we have to fight each other, and that's exactly what they want us to do. They want us bickering amongst ourselves instead of, really doing the proofs and really, booking an airline flight from Chile to whatever, and taking a compass and a gyro and whatever with you to verify the route that they're taking. And until that happens, it's all sort of speculative, but we don't even have to go to those proofs, because we have so many other things that actually are verifiable proofs. And so it's just, going down the rabbit hole of these red herring arguments and fighting amongst ourselves is counterproductive, and it's only going to hurt the movement as far as I can tell.
Well, like I said, people are quite capable of ignoring, this drama stuff. I mean, after all, I admin a Facebook group that has 2,600 people in it, okay? And there's 3 admins, me, my boyfriend, and another friend, and that's it. And none of us are on all the time. Not one or all of us are moderating all the time. I don't even like that word, because to me, moderating means censoring. So I tell people, if a troll gets in there, or if somebody starts acting up and being a butthead, then just ignore them. I mean, that bothers them more than giving them attention and feedback. And then hit the report button, and when one of us gets on, we'll delete them or get rid of him or whatever. But oh my God, instead my inbox fills up with, are you going to get to this person who's causing all of this distress? And yeah, I'm going to clean up on aisle 4 when I get there, and I will get the ghetto blaster out, and I will blast them right out of the group. But in the meantime, just ignore it or calm down. And because it's that way in life. I mean, if you go to the grocery store and there's a woman pushing her shopping cart down the aisle next to you, and the child is screaming I want Cocoa Puffs, like a crazy kid, and you either ignore the child or what are you going to do? You're going to go over to the mother and go, are you going to deal with this? Because one person would come over and say, oh, I'd spank his ass. That's what had happened to me when I was a little kid. I wouldn't if I threw a tantrum like that. And the mother would be going, oh. And then, another person would come over and say, oh, no, you need to get him out of the basket, and you need to hug him and kiss him and tell him you love him, So those are 2 totally opposite, different opinions about the same situation, correct? So with regards to this drama, if you can just get it in your head that these are dramatic people, or they possibly could be actors with a role, with a script to do what they're doing to keep you from having a comfortable flat earth experience. Okay? If that's the case, then we need to just realize it and either push those people to the sidelines and say, and not watch their videos, not post their videos, not, you know, give them any credence or credibility, or tell them off and say, you know, cut it, cool your jets with the drama. Period.
Yeah, well, I think there's far too many flat earthers out there that when somebody new comes in who's well known in the alternative community, they're just happy that they're a flat earther. They can talk any shit they like, and they'll still be happy because he's a flat earther now, you know. But if they're talking shit, at some point in the future, somebody's going to start picking holes in this shit and bringing it down. And that's what's happening with
Adam Moyer guy. I mean, all he had to do was say there is flat Earth evidence. I mean, obviously, there's proof. The proof for me, I mean, I listened to all these flat Earth videos and all this stuff, but when I personally went out and tried to find curvature and could not find it, and in fact found that there was none obvious, that did it for me. That was all I needed. The rest of the things will fall into place. But once the curvature falls apart, we don't have a globe anymore. And what we have, I don't know. But, you know, flat seems pretty logical when I look out and see a flat horizon and a long flat distance. Okay, let's change gears. Kristen was gone and now she's back. So I don't know whether she overheated or lost her connection or what. But I want to give Kristen the floor for a few minutes and have her talk about some of the things that she's been finding out, doing some research this week, and hopefully there's been a little time for that, and in spite of all the drama that she also has had to deal with.
Okay, yeah, I missed the last 10 minutes of your talk while my computer was cooling down before I could restart. So apologies, because I had already decided earlier today, as a matter of fact, that I've got to replace this darn computer this coming week, and so thanks for bearing with me. So if I get to be on again, hopefully this, you know, I will not bring technical difficulties with me anymore. And so, yeah, I wish I could have commented on things you were talking about before I lost the last 10 minutes there. My goodness, but and it's okay if we change gears anyway. Either way, so I could comment on a couple things or not, or just move.
Feel free if there was something you wanted to comment on. I just saw that your mic was muted, and
yeah, Kristen, just tell it as it is.
Yeah, just say it. Just say it.
Thank
girl.
you.
The rest of it.
Oh, I can't wait. Thanks for the full invitation. Really, I so want to tell it like it is, you know. We try to be diplomatic, you know. I'm not here to upset anybody. We've got to get to the bottom of stuff, though. So, you know, I wanted to make one point about the Mark Sargent thing. The kid you're talking about, Adam Moyer, is it, that made these videos? Okay, the more recent one he made, literally hours later, where he posted it from the one before, where I had seen that posted on your page. And in that later one, hours later, he sort of clarified, or, you know, further clarified where the problem is with Mark Sargent, showing the, you know, the timeline where when he joined the Flat Earth Society, not just joined, but has the membership, or how would we call it? Not the membership, but the card
carrying member of the Flat Earth Society.
Okay, great. And so, yeah, he points out, he clarifies that, okay, you don't get to have that card until you've really convinced them that you're already a believer in the flat earth. And so he says it really doesn't add up then. Okay, so this guy months earlier could have been a Flat Earth Society member, and then months after that claims is when the Jerry Maguire moment happened, as Lawrence pointed out earlier. So it doesn't work if he's correct that you can't get that card without really convincing them. If that's true, then we've got a real, a real bone to pick here. It's just getting more incriminating by the moment. I mean, he can go on the show and say that hand gesture he sat through the whole video making meant nothing, and I'm not insisting that it did mean something, but he can only keep pretending that nothing that he does means anything for so long, right? Doesn't this have to end somewhere? I'm just asking.
Right.
It's getting
like
a bit.
I called out, or asked Math Powerland when he was on the show about his 33 T-shirt and other hand signs that he's made, and he attempted to answer to it in his own way, whether you liked his answer, believed his answer, or not. And Jonathan asked him about his association with working at NASA. If Mark Sargent isn't prepared to stand behind what he says, and if he's not ready for people to question his timeline, I mean, he gave the timeline. It's his words. Go ahead.
Yes, exactly. So that Adam Moyer has a point to make. We need to listen. Some people commented they didn't like the approach of his video, whatever, but he really qualified his statements in that one I mentioned. So I hope people will follow up with it if they haven't heard him really just explain this. But again, this is another point that's easy enough for more people to confirm. We don't have to believe Adam Moyer just because he said it, but I think he had the courage to point it out to people, and all of us that are pointing out things about other characters that are curious at best, or at the very least, and suspect at worst, are just it's what we've got to do. My goodness, I could say so much about this. So,
well, I'll say something real quick, and maybe you can expand on this. But I was, and based on my research, under the impression that the Flat Earth Society was a place for shills who go around, doing talks to schools, explaining how stupid flat earthers are because they believe that the face of the Earth is accelerating upwards at 9.8 meters per second squared, and so ha ha ha, aren't the flat earthers stupid? So he got that card, and then 4 months later became a flat earther. This just confirms my suspicions that I've had since I think the second video I did. When I ran into Mark Sargent stuff, I was already well over the fence on this, and I was like, God, after watching his stuff, I'm scratching my head thinking, did I just lose my fucking mind? Or no, it's because the arguments that he brings to the table are sort of the same thing that the Flat Earth Society does. They bring arguments to the table that are ridiculous. And so, for him to go flashing that card, I've never seen any of this. This is the first time I've heard of any of this. But if he's going around flashing that card, to me, that he loses a lot of credibility there, especially if it happened before he became a flat earther.
Yes, he showed the card on Patricia's follow-up show after the Sasha Orphan Red episode. He showed the card. Rightly put it right up.
Yeah, and no self-respecting flat earther would ever join the official Flat Earth Society because everybody knows it's a pile of crap.
Exactly.
But he's joined it. I mean, what was all that about?
That's very curious.
I'm a glove-tard in disguise. Right. Okay, so
did he not?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yes, if he's such he claims to be a real conspiracy researcher, that he'd gone through them all, right? And then he kept looking at flat Earth going, no, 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 and then finally picked it up one day. And so are we supposed to believe he didn't find out about them being planned opposition from the start? Or did he miss that? Or what? So we do need to find out, why did he join? What was that all about? As Lawrence points out, that's a very big question. So
he
tomorrow,
knows they're controlled opposition. He says they're controlled opposition, and despite that, he goes and joins them. That just doesn't add up, does it?
Before he joins them, before he actually does the research and to debunk. That's his statement, that I went to do the research to debunk this flat Earth thing once and for all, and became a flat earther.
That's funny because I heard one of the first things that I remember seeing of him, he said that he basically came up with this stuff on his own. Maybe I'm misrepresenting him, but I seem to remember him basically saying that nobody led him to look at this. He just sort of one day, was looking through all the conspiracies and just sort of figured it out on his own. If I'm not mistaken, maybe I am.
Well, let's not mistake the fact that he did 12 flat Earth clues in depth about 12 different subjects, roughly, and where's the flat Earth clue on curvature? I mean, the number one suspect of the Earth being flat is the lack of curvature. Where's that?
Yes, I wanted to talk about that again, pointing out he doesn't make any any point in his presentation with the clues about the lack of curvature, and so again, it's all about this enclosed world thing, and this is crazy now because yeah, he did he piggybacked on the Flat Earth Society's disc with his dome. They fit together perfectly, and it's only recently now he'll say things like, oh, the aliens would be coming from other puddles across, the ice. And it's like, well, that was never his story before, but, it's...
No, before it was holes in the dome, portals, doorways. Something.
And now he's not even talking about how do they come through this dome. I pointed out to him when I talked to him on the phone for an hour that just because he claims they found an upper and outer edge, how does he make the leap to the dome? And he didn't argue with me about it. I said it doesn't necessarily mean it's a dome. He said that's right. I said, look, I'm not saying it's not in some way an enclosed world. Okay, I don't have a problem really with that. I have a problem with the idea that suddenly we leap to a dome without any real evidence for a dome and without a solid understanding of what an enclosure would really need to entail before we jump to such a crazy assumption like that. I mean, so, and then he'll say things like, well, he won't lose any sleep if his model ends up being wrong. He said that over and over in his different talk show, interviews, whatever. And then, meanwhile, the damage is done by the clues. That whole presentation is very much about NASA. It's very much about it becomes all about this so-called enclosure, again, this claim that they found an upper and outer edge, and it's nothing about the flatness, and so, my goodness, it's weird that he gets to call it the Flat Earth Clue. It's just not about that.
It was in the Truman Show, Kristen, so, I mean, come on.
right, that's what he's got going.
So enough Mark bashing for this beginning of the show for this week for now. I want to ask everybody a question. Those of us who have been flat earthing for 6 months or longer have had the opportunity over that period of time to have investigated pretty much, or at least hit on, every investigative avenue of the research of flat Earth, meaning curvature, how the sun works, how the moon works, how the stars work, looked at maps, looked at, distances and learned about the math of how to figure curvature and all of these things, and have sort of come out the other end, still sold that the Earth is flat, but now what? Now what? Of course, there's new people coming in every day. I mean, as a Facebook group admin, I turn away because I have a closed group and it is a non-debate format. It is just flat earthers. You have to be a card-carrying flat earther, not a Flat Earth Society bit. But in other words, you have to have posted it on your wall. You have to have some flat Earth friends. I have criteria that I look at, okay? But at the end of the day, these are people who have been convinced past 50 to 80% at least that the Earth is flat, and they want to continue their research. So then what? Then what's next? And this is one of the things that I'm not hearing from very many of the so-called leadership of the flat Earth, and that is, what is it? What are we doing? What is it for? Why go through all of this exercise and then just what are you going to do with it?
My thing is to keep on proving it and to keep on showing this to people, and I even set up a petition to to look at or revisit or abolish the Antarctic Treaty. And, I have almost 11,000 subscribers on YouTube, and so far only 400 people have signed the petition. So it's like, you can be, or I can be as enthusiastic as I want and try to do things, but, if we can't get people behind this in a real sense, it's almost like, it's like, what are we doing here?
Well, people will ask you, get behind what? What is the goal? Because that is the biggest question as far as I'm concerned. What is the end goal? Just to prove that the Earth is flat instead of round?
No, stop wasting $20 billion a year on NASA, get rid of the Antarctic Treaty, and basically get rid of lying governments that have used black budget programs like NASA to trick us. I mean, to me, that's the end goal. And I think that'd be great.
Everybody's sitting around hoping to kumbaya, and can't we all just get along and hold hands and and rally around the maypole of the flat Earth? People have lied. People have died for the lies that have been told. Okay, there is a revolution that's going to have to happen. And when people hear that word, they just like, she said the R word, revolution. Oh my God. Okay. There are bad people in control of the governments and the nation states and the banking system and every other technocratic organization that runs the world. And the only way that people will be able to be free is to be free of those people. Okay. And so that's my goal. And if I could come up with some kind of battle plan video, with the flag and the tens of thousands of soldiers on horses to show this is something that is going to ultimately have to be done, you can't just get these people to say one day, okay, we lied, we're sorry, oops, our bad, that the Earth is actually flat instead of a globe. There are people out there who believe that this is part of the psyop of flat Earth, that they want flat Earth to be known. They want us to understand it so that they can convert to their new world order. As a matter of fact, the words flat Earth are secretly being used, in my opinion, for those who would question my opinion. It is well known that when everybody agrees that we have, let's say we're in a board of directors meeting and everyone agrees, one of the terms that they use for everybody being in agreement is we have a flat Earth, meaning we're all on the same plane. But they don't mean literally the Earth is flat. They just mean we're in agreement. Okay? And that's a term that has become popular within the New World Order movement, is when we achieve flat Earth, we'll be able to fully implement the New World Order. I don't know if anybody else has heard that or not, but for as many years as I've been doing research, I know what they mean by we have a flat Earth.
Well, I don't necessarily agree. I think that in order for them to bring in this new world order, they need people asleep on a spinning globe, really, because so much of this other deception hinges on the globe Earth, and I think personally that the elites, this is the last thing they want coming out.
I believe this is. Let me make sure I clarify, John, because I want to make sure you're not misunderstanding what I'm saying. I absolutely agree that they want everybody asleep at the wheel and spinning on a globe. The insider terminology that they are using, or that they would understand and agree with, is when they have flattened out the Earth, meaning they now have created that UN map that they've been using, that everybody's on the same plane, everybody's equal, everybody's flattened out. Okay, that's what I mean, and I don't mean that they agree that the Earth is flat. Okay, just to be sure, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. No, I think I see what you're saying, and again, my position would be the people that think, because of their terminology or because of this whole movement being a psyop, they think that this is one of the necessities in order to achieve whatever global agenda. I think it's the opposite of that. That would be my response, and maybe I totally missed your point again. I don't know.
Okay, look at it this way. To a lot of people, humans on the Earth, the Earth has been flat. It's always been flat. It's never been round, ever. Their culture, their religion has always said the Earth is flat, and that's what they believe. Okay, so they're like organic flat earthers. They were already flat earthers and still are. We don't have to convince them of anything. Would you agree with that? Anybody?
Well, I haven't seen evidence for it, but dude, Jeff, I was talking to the other day on that show when we had that troll Tim Osmond pop in. He said that if you ask people from Honduras, they'll tell you that they're brought up in school learning about the flat Earth, and I'd really love to see some of their books and see what kind of models they have, if that's the case. Oh, I mean, it's possible, sure, and I believe that. I think that's great if there's actually large sections of population that aren't being fed globalism.
I think the Muslim religion believes the Earth is flat. It's in their culture, in their religion.
You'll see Muslim clerics come out and say that NASA's full of it. So yeah.
Right. So there are a lot more organic flat earthers than we understand there to be, okay, because they were never raised with the globe, okay. But also, when you look at the trend of the flat Earth trending, it is in the Western countries. It is United States, UK, Canada, Australia, parts of Europe that are the highest ranking in the trending of flat Earth communique. So those are all countries that were raised with the globe.
Yep.
And they're rebelling.
It is worldwide. If you look at the analytics of videos, I mean, I've only put one out, but you're talking, there are people watching flat Earth videos in hundreds of countries. And some of them, it gets down to some remote island in the middle of nowhere, and there was one viewer. I had one who viewed it from Greenland, which I posted to say
Greenland, it exists. Oh my God.
But yeah, ultimately, everybody a lot of the people who are latching onto flat Earth see this as an opportunity to change the entire world as a result of, because this is the biggest lie ever, and if this lie could be shown to be proven to everybody, then all the other lies should fall down like a set of dominoes.
Well, there you go. And I was yelled at in the comments from a guy the other day for being a stupid flat earther and for not that this is a distraction and that we should all be focusing on 9/11 because, bless you, because 9/11 is the thing that will bring down these lying global government people. And I said, I'm sorry, but it's had a decade and a half to accomplish something, to get back in the courtroom, to have a new 9/11 commission, report, a new investigation. It isn't going to happen. Not under the current conditions, not under the current government structure. It's not going to happen. So I'm not saying kiss it goodbye, and I'm not saying it's relegated to the trash bin, but at the same time, this is what's current, and why not focus on it and utilize it to keep the dialogue going? But again, we have to have a goal. We have to have a focus, or otherwise, once somebody becomes a flat earther, it's like, okay, I'm a flat earther. Now what? And now, aren't we supposed to change something just because the whole dynamic of the world changed suddenly from a globe to flat? Kristen, jump in.
Yeah, not easy to jump in sometimes.
I know. You have to, though. I mean, you just have to start talking, and your little icon will come up, and then others will shut up, like me.
Okay, great. I could get seasoned at jumping in over time.
Okay.
So yeah, it brings me back to Tiger Dan talking about the idea that if we don't have a map, that the flat Earth is kind of, how does he say it in the video? That we don't, or the title of the video even is basically like, without the map, there's no flat Earth.
Right.
These, you kind of touched on this earlier, but even what you were just saying right there brought me back to it. And I kind of wanted to mention that before anyway, and it's still relevant at this point in the conversation. That they are very separate things. Whether we have a map yet or not is really very, very separate from all of the irrefutable proofs of this flat Earth. And so I hope people do bear that in mind and not listen to this nonsense about it all being about whether we have a working map or not. So, that's important to remember. I heard Tiger Dan say something about these flat earthers as though he's not one himself. And not that he was really saying that, but it just struck me as odd. But anyway, and besides that, I think people are just they're challenged by this. I understand it's almost not enough that it's just flat for so many people. Like we kind of touched on last week, whether it kind of comes down to whether you personally really need to know or feel like you need to know the whole story right now. But I would remind people that there were already so many things we had to accept before in the previous concept of the heliocentric model, and with regard to whether or not there was a creator, which they would love us to think there isn't in the scientific position with the heliocentrism, but we had to accept a lot of things we just might never know, and I would encourage people to accept the possibility that we might still be left with a certain margin of that unknown forever, forever. As much as we may ever figure out about this, there might be that part that we're not supposed to figure out, or we're not supposed to know. And I kind of touched on this a previous week, but I think it just bears repeating because it's, we don't want that weird expression of throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. Okay, we have a flat Earth proven. That's not going to change because we might struggle for years to figure out a map or figure out the path of the sun or figure out all the nuances of this system. We could take 100 years, I don't know, but let's just be realistic about what we really need to know to be okay and solid and secure about knowing the Earth is flat.
Yeah, I
really
totally
just need
agree.
a lack of curvature. That's it. Thank you. Go on.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say I totally agree with that. I'm getting feedback here. Sorry. Take my headset off. Nope, there it's gone. Okay, so no, I agree that this margin of uncertainty is totally true, and perhaps there's things that we're just simply incapable of registering, incapable of understanding. And I go back to the analogy. Well, first of all, like say the Big Bang, everything exploded from nothing, and we live on a little chunk of an explosion. I mean, that's what you have to believe for heliocentrism, and that's ridiculous when you think about it. But go back to the writings of Carl Sagan. He talked about the two-dimensional flatland. Hypothetically, if you lived in a two-dimensional space, that would be like living inside a sheet of paper. And if something like an apple passed through a three-dimensional object, passed through the sheet of paper, all you'd see is a single line that gets, that just appears and gets wider and then gets shorter and then disappears. So in a two-dimensional matrix, you don't have the ability to understand a three-dimensional object as it really is. And so if there are, higher dimensions, or per se, then we're not hardwired to understand certain things. And a good example is look at the frequency of visible light range. That's just a small little slice of the actual spectrum that we can see. And so we are technically very biased and very poor observers in that regard. And so I don't think it's a big stretch at all to say that there may be stuff that we're not supposed to or just simply cannot understand, and that's fine with me.
Well, I liken it to the dog whistle.
Yeah.
I mean, humans can't hear a dog whistle, but dogs, it's like, there it is. And so there's frequencies we can't hear. There's things we can't see. So why would we think that we'd be able to understand everything? Okay. Plus, These bastards have had 500 years to hone the lies and make lies for lies and mathematical equations for lies and cover-ups for lies. 500 years. We've been working on this, what? I'm in at 10 months. Woohoo. Okay. So it's going to take a little longer than that. And even yet, it may never quite be understood. They just made up theories to explain how it could be.
Yeah, they sure did, and that's what I don't want to see happen with this is, okay, well, whatever we can't explain, we have to understand it, so let's just go off into wild speculation. I mean, you know, that's a big issue.
It's a huge issue. I mean, it's one that I'm fighting every day, and I am so adamant about this kind of speculation and theory making. You don't even have you have a couple of observations that you can use to create this theory out of, and then if most people, being lazy as they are, don't question your theory too much, then when someone does come along and they're like, oh, it sounds pretty good, okay, yeah, and then when someone does come along, some curmudgeonly old son of a bitch like Lawrence comes love you, Lawrence, comes along and says, oh, but the map is wrong, it doesn't work. Then, or Kristen says, oh, but the dome, it doesn't work. Then they're the bad guy? How does that work? Because the reality says that there's no evidence. And, you know, I liken it to a courtroom, for example. You go into a courtroom and you are the defense attorney and you're supposed to defend your client with any means necessary. And why, when you watch the old courtroom drama shows, the defense attorney will do everything they can to find an alternative way that this could have happened and create reasonable doubt. And that doesn't have to have happened that way, and it doesn't have to be true. It just has to be plausible. And so that's what I think they've done in so many situations with regards to the definition of the globe. This looks like that, so it might be that, and so nobody else is going to question it for maybe 500 years. And now 500 years later, some of us are questioning it. And I think we have the right to do that, basically because we weren't there when it was created, when it was invented. And we were born, you know, in a reality that we just accepted without question. And then suddenly some people started questioning it. I mean, the flat earth's been around a lot longer than us, for crying out loud. We didn't create the flat earth movement. There's always been one, always.
Yeah, I think they want to shut it down as quickly as they can. That's the way it's looking. Because if this does continue, I mean, like in Rowbottom's time, when he was talking about it, there was only books and newspapers as a means of communication, and so it was quite easy when he passed away that it all just fell away. But now it's not going to fall away because people are not going to stop talking about it. And some people are going to do some really serious research, and the truth is going to come out about the nature of where we are. And there's definitely something that they want to hide, whether it's in the North Pole, the South Pole, and the structure that we're in, if there is a structure, that's going to come out. People are going to put two and two together. All it will take, for example, is for somebody to go on a world cruise. Yeah, they go on a world cruise with a compass, and they get on the deck every day, and they make notes of, and do sketches of, where the ship is going, and if the ship is actually going east and coming out in the west, then that's another hole in the circular Earth model. And if it is a flat model, then the only way the flat model can work as if it's a continuous loop that brings you back on the other side. And people are fighting against this, but all the big names, they keep coming out and they keep putting the videos out and keep pushing this round Earth with a circling sun. And there's no evidence. Nobody anywhere has given me any evidence that the sun is circling us. But come the summer, get your compasses out for the summer, get down to a beach where you can see the sunrise and the sunset, and let's see what arc the sun will do in the sky. It won't be doing more than 180 degrees, in my opinion. I'm going to do it myself, and I'll actually buy a camera if I need to and do a YouTube on it. But I don't think this sun is doing anything more than passing in a straight line, which will appear as a 180-degree arc, because unless the sun's directly overhead, it will appear to be an arc, because that's where it is.
One thing I've sort of been trying to understand, and I guess it's sort of understood when you realize what the Mercator projection is, but you've got 180 degrees east and west of the prime meridian, but you've only got 90 north and south of the equator. So to me, that's a little bit suspect, because if it was a sphere, wouldn't it have 180 degrees from each 0 point?
Exactly, John. Yeah, I was thinking that today. Why, there should be some, and they've got different measurements for, the latitude according to how high you go up, and it's worth bugger all at the top and a lot in the middle, and the same with the longitude, which makes it a bit of, because if you look where Greenland is on the map, you look at the base of Greenland, half of Russia is at the same latitude as Greenland, which means Russia must be tiny as well. But I actually brought up all the airports in Greenland, and there's a lot of airports in Greenland up on the west side. There's nobody at all living in the east. There's a few in the south and a few up the west side. But you look at those airports, and if you actually book a flight in Greenland on an internal flight, it's several thousand miles and many, many hours to go from one end to the other. And I'm thinking it could be as much as 3,000 or 4,000 miles from one end to the other, which would disprove that everything is going to infinity towards the top. I think Greenland's far much bigger than what they're letting on.
Well, a lot of what I've found in my research after the Gypsy Girl's video, I took it upon myself. I didn't have a lot of time to do it, but I did a cursory look at the airports and the map and where predominantly where the towns were and the people lived, and then I started reading these 3,000 kilometers into the Arctic Circle. Then I'm thinking, well, this is a big freaking place. What is everybody arguing about that Greenland is only supposed to be, what is it, 14% of Africa or something? It sure seems pretty big to me when you start talking about 3,000 and 4,000 miles inside the Antarctic or the Arctic Circle, and then there's several military bases there. So we all know that that's no-fly zone. That's why there's no-fly zone over the Arctic. Did you have a chance to do much looking into Greenland, Kristen, lately?
Well, I kept up with Lawrence, what he found out about it, and looked into one of the points. Another thing he found out was was it a Wikipedia site, Lawrence, with the different coastline measurements of different countries?
Yeah, I looked at an internal flight in, I think it was Sweden or Norway, from one end to the other, and if you drew a line on the map and then drew the same line on Greenland, it only took it a very short way into Greenland, and that was nearly 1,000 miles.
Well, and the thing is, I just had a brief look at the countries list and the different lengths of their coastline, and it already reveals itself right away, if any of those numbers are correct, that it's looking like it matches what we see on the Mercator map, which is not what they say the sizes of those continents are when you Google what are the square miles of, the U.S. or what are the square miles of Greenland, and you get a number on the screen. So it's not, this Mercator thing, it's like how much I learned from John's video about it this week was great. I was glad he went into depth about how it was maybe derived in other ways, like how he was talking about interesting how Mercator could have come up with that without having explored all the continents, but that it was based a lot on this ability to navigate by the stars. So to answer Lori's question from last week that I couldn't quite articulate an answer to at the time, I do think the sky system has a lot to do with the layout of the continents. And last week I was suggesting that the place to start might be in terms of figuring out the orientation of the continents to first nail down the path of the sun, only insofar as the general orientation of the continents with regard to north and south, right? But then when it comes to the relative sizes, that's where we've got to zero in and also be more specific when it comes to verifying the flights and verifying what we can about fact-checking these actual sizes of continents. And so I'm glad that Lawrence really got in there a little deeper and found this coastline thing by country. Unfortunately, it's not by continent, and so we couldn't see Africa, for instance, on there because there's so many countries in Africa. So, but just looking again, compared to U.S. and compared to, I think Lawrence said Australia, which I didn't even get that far, it doesn't make sense with what they're saying those country sizes are. So that it's all stacking up, that there's something more to the Mercator map. We can't throw it away. They use it for navigation. We need to deal with it. It's Google Map. We need to deal with it. We need to start there. We need to start with what we do know and work from there instead of in reverse, touching on a point you made early on, Lori. You know, that's really how you have to approach this, in my opinion, too.
Yeah, if the Mercator map is horribly skewed towards the northern region, then it would be totally useless as a navigation tool. Because like if you look up near Greenland and places like that, there's so many little tiny islands and fjords and things like that. You know, navigating that using a Mercator map, you might as well throw it back in the sea. You won't be able to use it. You'd have to use something else.
Well, and on top of that, obviously the ice moves, the bergs shift, the things are calving all the time. There's glaciers forming and moving, and how do you map that?
And, you know, my question is how many times had Mercator been to Greenland? Because wasn't he, you know, out of like Germany or something? What was it? I can't remember where he was from, but it was in Europe. And it's like, so, okay, had he ever been to Greenland? I don't know. But you'd think, and, you know, we rag on, I always rag on the caste system. Like, you know, if your dad was a shoemaker, then you're a shoemaker. If your dad was a king, then you're a king. That's the caste system, right? Well, people were actually trained in a profession their whole lives, right? So you've got people like, you know, Bach or Beethoven that are reading music and writing symphonies when they're little kids because that's what they were, as they were going to be a musician. And Mercator was going to be a map maker, I presume. And so they got good at their craft and they knew what they were doing. But I don't think Mercator had ever been to California, and he mapped that out pretty damn good.
I'm looking at Mercator right now. I just hit the Wikipedia one just to hit it first because I figure at least they would get right where he came from. And he's from Rupelmonde County of Flanders, which doesn't tell me any. County of Flanders, Germany, modern day Germany.
Yeah, okay. And it was before it was called Germany, I think. That's why I couldn't think of the name, but yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about 1512 to 1594 is when he lived. So I would say for a map maker, he did pretty good.
Yeah, that's right.
He probably knew a lot more than what we realised, because Mercator was making globes. You know, he was a globe maker. And he was making globes before Copernicus came out with his book, if indeed Copernicus is not a fictitious character. So, you know, he's doing both, isn't he?
Well, he was also making azimuthal equidistant projections. He made the Mercator projection. So, you know, to me, I'm not 100% convinced one way or another. It's a big mystery, and I think that's for a reason. You know, I think that it's set up that way for a reason. We're told that the Mercator projection is inaccurate, and even if you ask a cartographer, a mainstream cartographer that don't even bring up flat Earth, ask them, do we have an accurate map? They'll tell you, no. Do we have an accurate globe? Well, no, not really. And so, you know, again, maybe that Mercator projection is more accurate than we think, and there's something else covered up that we don't know. But I'd never heard that he was a globe maker, and to me that's a little bit, it's kind of funny because, like you said, Copernicus wasn't around, and Newton didn't even write the Principia for another 150 years, and so there wasn't the physical scientific framework for the globe then.
Well, I know that's why it doesn't add up, because if he was a globe maker, then the globe Earth theory came out before Copernicus. It came out with Mercator. If you go on Wikipedia on Mercator, there's lots of links, and you can even see one of the globes that he made.
Maybe they were going under both assumptions back then. Maybe they were the same as us. They were like, well, we don't know, so let's do it this way and let's do it this way.
Possibly. And you know what? I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I'm getting yelled at right now in the group for the way we're bashing on Gypsy Girl, for the way that she put this video out. And again, I mean, I have to reiterate, we're not bashing on the people. We're bashing on their attempt to pass something off as absolute when they have not done an adequate amount of research. And, I'm sure there's somebody out there going, well, where's your map? Where's your proof? Where's your whatever? I don't have to have an alternative to what anybody else is putting out. None of us do, okay? But if you're going to try to put something out there, and you better have your big girl pants on and be ready to, defend it, because if you're going to act so self-assured that what you're saying is, oh, I know. I mean, she even went so far as to say, I'm talking with I'm working with a professor at the University of Florida in Jacksonville. Okay, well, let's have the rest of the research. Does this, give us his name. Let us find out who you're talking to. Give us more information, okay? So, if you can't handle being questioned, then don't even bother doing research. I mean, I hate to say it that way, because you have to be able to be somewhat scientific if you're going to, especially if you're going to say, breaking with that kind of attitude. Look what I found, look what I got, okay? And then you go, wah, when we go, what? Wait a minute, no Greenland? I mean, I'm sorry, I've been taking hits for 9 months now since I've, become a flat earther for whatever I say, no matter what. Doesn't matter whether I say A or B, okay? And I'm still here, and my skin's thicker because of it. But I'm a questioner. I question everything. So I'm going to, of course, question what someone puts on my Facebook group. I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to question it. And if if I ask you, and I was very kind and I was very nice, Lawrence can testify. I said, what do you mean no Greenland? And she said, yes, ma'am, no Greenland, no big N-O, N-O, no Greenland. Okay, well then we're done, because I can bomb this thread for the rest of the day with shit from Greenland, okay, proving that Greenland exists. So, and that Australia is Australia. I mean, it's its own country, okay? It didn't suddenly become, Australia before it was Greenland. Or whatever. They both exist. You can't replace one with the other. So in anybody's excitement to put something out there, maybe you need to choke it back a little bit. I mean, Jonathan's come up with ideas. Kristen's come up with ideas. We've all been attacked for our ideas. And we're still here. And we're still trying. Okay.
And we really do. We have a responsibility, and I don't want people to think that we're ragging on people. I never even saw the Gypsy Girl video, but it has to be discussed, because you know, when people trust you and they trust your research and they trust your word on things, and then you go and make unsubstantiated claims, then, you know, you're gonna get people in trouble. You're gonna get people with the wrong idea. And to me, you know, that's really important. And we sort of have a responsibility to our, you know, to our listeners and to our viewers. So.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to have a show and we're going to be on this panel and we're going to talk week to week about what's going on in Flat Earth, that's the premise of this. It's not about interviewing people. It's not about asking, you know, where were you born and what was your first pet's name. It's about what's going on in the Flat Earth community and in the movement right now, this week, and ongoing. If we get on a topic like maps or something, we're going to continue it from week to week until we either arrive at something or we can come on here and go breaking. Look what we discovered. Okay, if that happens, you'll be the first to know. But in the meantime, then consider us the critic panel. I don't know. You know. It's just like going and watching a movie at the box office, you know, box office blockbuster this week, and then coming back and going, you know, really, I'm sorry, it wasn't all that, you know. That's the reality that we may have to be dealing with. If you don't want to hear that, if that is off-putting to you, if that is offensive to you, turn us off, because we're not here to make, you know, to just, wow, so-and-so's making video, another video, yay, that's a thumbs up, everybody, watch it, you know, and it's wrong? No, I'm sorry. That's not what this is about.
That was what annoyed. I mean, she had about 700 or 800 views, Gypsy Girl, and she'd had over 100 thumbs up, and I'm thinking, are these flat earthers? They're giving her a thumbs up. I mean,
is it the personality that they're giving the thumbs up? Is it because she seems nice? Or, I mean, what is it? It can't be thumbs up for the information. Go online and look up Greenland. It freaking exists. It's not Australia upside down. Okay.
I know. I had to click on that. You know, that balls out physics guy. I had to click on his icon to see whether it was really him, because he said it was a great video.
You know what though? In all honesty, let me say something here, okay? And I think this is a lot of what's happening. People aren't watching all of these videos. They're not watching the whole thing. They're clicking on them. They have, you know, maybe they have a click going on where they, you know, you like mine and I'll like yours. I don't know, but if they watch the whole thing and then they thumbs it up, and then they are, in my opinion, they're endorsing it. Or if they make a comment, they write in the comments, great job, great video, okay? Patricia Steer did that. Flat Earth and Hot Potatoes. She wrote it right in there, you know, great job, great video, whatever, okay?
Yes, Patricia Steer's saying, yeah, I agree. Greenland doesn't exist.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
If somebody says Greenland doesn't exist in a presentation about the flat Earth, and a prominent flat earther says it was a great video, what does that tell you?
Well,
they're not genuine. Nobody genuine is going to say that's a great video.
You know what? And here's another thing that people may not like that I say it, but if you're too lazy if you watch a video and you give it a thumbs up and you say, you know, nice video, and you're too lazy or too tired or too busy, whatever it is, to go and look up the information and verify what the person is trying to say. If you can't do that, then just be quiet. Just don't put a like or a comment or anything, because you literally are endorsing what this person is saying. And then people like me have to come along, or Lawrence or Morgile or Kristen have to come along later and have to defend. No, I'm sorry, not all flat earthers feel that way. Not all flat earthers think that Greenland doesn't exist. I mean, how stupid does that sound?
Yeah, and that's really true. And, you know, one of the things that I try to do is just to stick to stuff that pretty much any flat earther can get behind, because it's the truth. And for me, if I can keep on debunking the globe and find new ways and repeating the same ways, because I've got one video that's had over 250,000 hits, and most of my videos have about 10 or 20,000 hits. So I guess what I'm saying is not everybody's seen all the proofs and all the work that I've done personally. And if I've got a proof that is a good, valid proof that really can't be argued with, I'm going to stick with that. But if we start trying to think of creative ways to talk about this and say, well, Greenland definitely doesn't exist, that's an issue, because you're right. Then other people have to go and say, well, no, not everybody's saying that. No, not everybody's saying there's a dome in the sky. No, not everybody's saying that this or that or whatever the other thing is. So you're right, and at the end of the day, we can certainly prove that the world isn't any sort of spinning globe, and to me, that's enough. You don't really, I don't have to go much beyond that, and finally realize that the world is actually flat and stationary, and that's looking at even other exotic models. But
well,
yeah,
you know what? You can't go and bust on globe heads and not NASA freaks and anybody who completely buys into the mainstream globe theory and is a, pardon my French, and I apologize in advance, but there's no better word than this word right now. They're star fuckers. They find every star that they can find, and they just want to get behind that star, whoever they are. Okay, so if you have somebody who says something like, I see it all the time in comments, blah, 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 under the dome, or blah, 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 the flat earth and the dome. And I'm like, okay, so this person puts the dome in the flat earth like they're inextricably tied already, okay? And the more that person's out there commenting on wherever, all over the place, making it sound like they are inextricably tied, becomes the norm. And then someone like me comes along, or one of you guys, and says, no, yeah, actually, no, there's no dome. There could be a dome, but nobody's ever proven a dome. So until someone proves it, that's a whole lot of words to have to unexplain someone who stated something as fact already, and to the degree that everybody else gets lumped in with them. If you're a flat earther, you're also a domer. Okay? That's not the truth. That's not the way it is. So this person just left the group, boom, just like that, while we were talking, because we're bashing. We're bashing.
If this is bashing, I don't know what to say to people. Or are they serious? Are they serious?
Absolutely serious.
We could be bashing. Maybe they need to see the difference between actual bashing and what we're actually doing, because this is not bashing.
No, this is truth-seeking. This is trying to find the most honest, truthful things we can get behind and say. Excuse me. And if that's not enough, if the things that we've already proven, to the degree that we have proven it, is not enough for you, then and you want to go be in fantasy land and start dreaming up, fantasies that the flat earth is, be my guest. Make a movie, write a book, do a blog. I don't care. But you are not going to be considered mainstream flat earther with any unsubstantiated claims to what you believe. You're absolutely entitled to your opinion. You're absolutely entitled to what you want to believe and dream up. But please stop stating it as fact, because if it's not a fact, then we're going to debunk it. We can't catch it all, but the blatant ones we can catch. Now, I have to ask you, okay? I have to ask you guys. Lawrence posted the girl's video, the woman's video. Several people questioned her in this thread. It was a fairly long thread. I pretty much bombed the thread with proof that Greenland exists. I mean, if I could have gotten somebody from Greenland on the phone, I probably would have, okay? And then suddenly the girl is gone, okay? And not only is she gone, her name's blacked out, which means she's either blocked me and everyone else that I asked, can you see her name? Can you see her? Did she leave the group? What happened? And they said, no, I mean, she's blocked me. Well, she didn't block all these people. So that tells me automatically that she has literally shut down her Facebook account, okay? And then I went to click on the video again to watch it again to make sure of what it was she was saying, and the video had been removed. So what would compel someone to be so animated? Oh, look what I did, look what I got, look at here, there's no Greenland, and this is this and this is that. And then within minutes, their Facebook account is gone and the video itself is gone, and so are all the other Flat Earth videos.
Yeah, it's just like that Joseph Townley. It's exactly the same thing that's happened.
So if this person
he fell off.
out to be an agent or a shill or a troll or a whatever, a cuckoo zany, whatever she turns out to be, or just a person who can't stand the heat of someone pushing back and asking questions, then so be it. See ya. I mean, I'm sorry. That might sound really harsh, but don't. The part that gets me upset is that for someone to say, you know, yes, ma'am, that no Greenland, and then when I show that here it is, this is Greenland, then you're mad at me because I proved there's Greenland. You're the one who made the accusation that there's no Greenland. So this is the kind of thing that we're going to face from now on.
Yeah, and the other thing that we have to be careful of too is hearing something that we think makes sense and running with it, because that'll get us into trouble. I mean, that's exactly what got us into this whole mess in the first place, I believe. And so we really just have to try to be the best observers and document things the best we can and try to verify things. I mean, I wish I had unlimited funds to go fly all around the world like Tiger Dan says he did in his videos, which he probably actually didn't take any of those flights, but just saying, it'd be nice to be able to do that and take our own way to, navigate and verify the routes and prove this thing conclusively. But, I don't know about you guys, but I sure don't have, thousands of dollars per week to go spend on airline flights.
Well, I'm not here to be a flat earth rock star, okay? I say this week after week, and it appears that, I'm never going to make that goal of being a flat earth rock star because I keep pissing people off. But this isn't about having fun, and it isn't about, kumbaya and hug fest. It's not about that. It's about the truth. I'm not doing this for money. I'm not doing this for fun. I'm doing this to get to the bottom of why we're being lied to and why they would continue to lie once enough people come forward and say, wait a minute, put on the brakes. This is not a globe. There's too many proofs that we're not spinning. If you just prove you're not spinning, now suddenly the spinning ball comes to a stop, and then what happens? All the water goes flying off, and all the people go flying off because the spinning is the part of the gravity that's holding this whole thing together, okay? So it can't stop, right? Haven't every scientist in the history of the spinning lie said that the spinning is part of the way that it works? Okay. So if you can prove that we're fixed, and then you can prove that we're flat, we're not a sphere. And they're the ones that came up with the numbers. We didn't. 25,000, just under 25,000 miles in circumference. That's a finite number. That's the number that's been used to create the 8 inches, the miles squared times 8 inches for the formula for the spherical trigonometry for the curvature. It doesn't exist. It's not there. So it's your math, not our math. It's your number. You made it. You have to defend it. We don't.
Yeah.
We get to question it.
I think the lack of spinning is probably more important a point, or an easier to prove point, than the lack of curvature, because light waves are very fickle and they do tend to bend around different sorts of fields and things like that. And so those are, light waves are sort of a poor thing to base calculations on. But if we can prove that it's stationary, that's all physics is, which is why it's so daunting and sort of unreal, is because physics is literally the study of bodies in motion. And, if all of physics has this fundamental premise totally wrong, then how are you going to convince them that they don't know shit? How do you convince a doctorate in physics that he honestly doesn't know shit? You can't.
Well, because all that they're working with is numbers. Their formulas create the reality, not the reality is defined. The numbers don't prove the reality, they just define it, right?
Yeah, well, mathematics is mostly theory. Theoretical physics is certainly mostly theory, and measurement defines reality. Mathematics only describes reality. Really, I think that's probably the better way to put it.
Okay, that's what I was trying to say.
There you go.
So, they're like I said, they're their numbers. We didn't arbitrarily come up. I have people argue with me, though. Well, that's not the right curvature formula. Based on what? Well, based on that squared thing. Well, it's a sphere. It's not a slope. It's a sphere. You go through that whole argument until now they're angry. Well, you know what? I'm angry too because I've been lied to. This formula is their formula. They won't even claim it. They have some other mysterious formula that they're using that actually doesn't work for their sphere of 25K, 25,000 miles in circumference. So do I get agitated and get all upset and throw the cards in the air and say the game's over? No, I keep going. I keep plugging along just like all of us do. Okay, when we get made fun of because we don't buy into a map or we don't buy into a circling sun without better proof.
A couple of things.
Jump in.
Thank you. When we're talking about the stationary Earth concept, we're talking about the geocentric model, right? And once we've done our research, we find out that debate's been going forever. Any honest scientist would have to admit to you that that's a real debate, still ongoing, and that up to maybe 50 years ago, roughly, is my understanding so far, that it was much more lively up to that point, but it's still there. And so where we run into a problem there is there's been all kinds of proof that it's stationary already, but that debate still goes on because they still haven't been able to win it, because that geocentric model is still flying in the face of the pervasively accepted heliocentric model, even though in the absence of any proof for it. So any of these people who believe in geocentrism, they're already up against the wall of what the mainstream community they're a part of believes, and so they're not getting very far. They're in this minority. They're landlocked by the bias of the consensus of agreement among scientists who, just like with the theory of evolution, said, well, okay, it sounds good. This is what is meant by peer review.
Yeah, and one thing I would add is that the big budgets push certain names and ideas.
Wait, hold they're talking.
Oh.
Argyle, go ahead and start.
Well, I was just going to add that it's, like the big budgets push people in science and push theories in science. Like, for example, the Smithsonian covers up all sorts of stuff that goes against evolution. And look at Einstein, he was basically put on a pedestal. Look at Nikola Tesla. He was discredited while Thomas Edison was put on a pedestal. So you have interests backing science to the degree, it's almost like an analogy I would use is like pop music. So Einstein and Thomas Edison are basically like Britney Spears and Justin Bieber. It's not that people actually like that music, it's that people are influenced in terms of what they like and what they subscribe to. That's it. And the people that are in control of the media know this. So that's I was
And
just going
that's
to add that, not
happening
to interrupt.
inside the flat Earth right now.
Yes.
That same thing.
Exactly that, where they're trying to use this consensus bias by pushing it off as crazy, and that we believe in it for no valid reason at all, because they've said nothing about the lack of curvature. Obviously, when they present it in these articles, it's always these other conjectures of this enclosed thing, the domed disc, and all of this other stuff, and
Yeah.
it's always the same spin on it. And the other point I wanted to make is, well, the point I wanted to make about the geocentric thing is we're fighting a real battle there, because it's been long proven, but it's still not accepted. And so we would just become part of that unending, debate, if you will. But so I think it comes back to the thing we really have, and why they just won't talk about it, is the curvature, the lack of curvature. And a couple of things I left to say there. I did a quick formula, very basic. I thought, okay, well, what if the sphere was 4 times bigger? So it's 100,000 miles around. And that would mean we would find a quarter of the same curvature, of the amount of curvature, rather, we would find for 25,000. So 30 miles, let's look at that example. It's 600 feet on the 25,000 mile, formula. Now let's just take it down to a quarter of that. We'd still be looking for 150 feet of curvature in 30 miles. And we're not finding it. So we can split hairs about what we can see or not see all day long, because not everybody ever get on board about that.
In order for the whole heliocentric globe Earth model to work, those numbers sort of have to be accurate. They have to. Otherwise, their model doesn't work. And if their model doesn't work, that's what everybody's basing all their assumptions on, is that one theoretical model. And so, I definitely see what you're saying. And in terms of what they're doing, that's exactly what they're doing with flat Earth. So when an average person that researches this, or does their version of research into this, they'll say, well, I watched Mark Sargent and he's been debunked, and I watched Eric DeBay and he's a neo-Nazi, so I can't get behind him. And then I watched the regular person named Steven, and he thinks it's a globe but it's inverted. These people are stupid, and I'm going with science on this. And I think that's what they're doing with it, is exactly right, that it's just people conforming.
Nothing about the one obvious thing at all, because that is the one irrefutable thing. We have to keep coming back to that, because we could argue with them for 100 years about what is the moon and what is the sun and all of these other things. But the thing that's measurable, again, forgetting what our eyes can see for a minute, let's realize it's also measurably flat. This guy makes an excellent video. I don't know, I'm not really familiar with his channel at all, but it's Odin Rising is the channel, and he's got a great video about, it's gotten a ton of views. He put a great title on it, 40,000 views, I think, in just a couple months or so, maybe pushing 3 months, and saying, it's not convex, it's not concave, it's flat. And he's using the example of the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge, if I'm saying the right bridge, the 23 or so, 24-mile bridge. And he points out that that bridge itself is a rectilineator experiment. That's 23 miles of flat, measurably flat bridge, and it's exactly parallel to the surface of the water. We don't need to beat our head against a wall about this, but the issue is getting the mainstream to see that it's really that simple. It really is that simple, and the rest of it, all this conjecture about an edge, or the insistence that there needs to be an edge, or all the other nonsense about the enclosure, is so remotely secondary. It's not even worth our breath, honestly, at this point. It's neat to talk about it, but again, some of that we may never know, and we're going to have to be able to accept that. How long are we going to be able to do weekly discussions? How long are we going to be able to talk about certain points? We have to be realistic. What we can focus on is only so much, and all this stuff is worth discussing. It's awesome and it's important, but as far as the mainstream goes, we're going to see soon if they do collapse this thing, or attempt to, in the mainstream's eyes, as a joke, which it would appear, as we're agreeing, it would seem that seems to be happening. We will see who's real and who's not, as far as who carries on as a researcher in the name of we have way more questions than we have answers at this point, and we're okay with that. And wherever that road takes us, and however long it has to take, the more support the better. But we have to be in it for the imperative of truth. And the other there was one other thing there, but the point about why I did that little mental exercise of what if they are just telling us, what if they're wrong? What if they're just wrong about their math and maybe the ball is 4 times bigger?
Right. Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
As you point out, Jonathan, I wanted to make the point to say we would have a hard time if they suddenly said, you know what, it's actually 4 times bigger than we said, because that means they could be wrong about so many other things too. But I also was making the point that we still don't even find a quarter of the Earth's curvature, and I could have gone further and said you double that again to a 200,000 mile ball, and you're still going to need to find 775 feet of curvature in 30 miles. Well, pretty sure we're not going to find that either, right? But the thing is, I mean, until people can get it that it is that simple, you don't need to know anymore, then it's not something that's, easily pushed through the mainstream. I mean, hey, I understand physics has been going crazy for a couple years because of those 3 separate probes that have been sent out over the last 20 years that have come back saying the same thing, even though the 3rd probe they started over, used a different everything, apparatus and software, and if I've got it remotely right, but that's my understanding. And still, every time it says that Earth is the center of the universe, and so physicists are freaking out because that's not the consensus bias, based on a theory that was never proven, of course. And so that's what we're dealing with. But we have to ask why would they? How did that even come out in the mainstream that these probes are coming back proving the geocentric model, and yet
because they can say the programmer messed it up.
I suppose so, but it's really something that's a big deal that's kind of being put out, but then also not put out in a big way. So it's sort of like, almost like a test. So how many people even are paying attention to if we put out something that really it should ring their bell and say, this is a big deal, because a geocentric model is what not proves, but points to a creator for people, and people's idea that we're the center of the universe. That's the big deal, and why that debate has been so long-standing, and why they want to push this other reverse idea that we're really going around the sun, right? And it's that, the Copernican model, so the heliocentric model. Anyway, somebody pick it up there, please. Thank you.
I was just going to say that sometimes things don't add up. Because I was one of the first people.
Wait a minute, too many people are talking again. Hold on. Go ahead, Lauren.
This business that we're all told, and we've all ran with it because somebody's posted it, and there was a bit of a video about it, about this Cola Deep mine where they went down, they could only drill down 8 miles. I mean, that might be a cover story. Maybe they can drill down a whole lot deeper, and maybe they have. And they're using that as a cover story to say that we can't. There's so many lies being told that it's difficult. We need to start re-examining all the things that we've told and taken on board as gospel, and re-examining it and see whether this stands up. I mean, if I got unlimited amounts of money, I'm sure I could get down deeper than 8 miles. I mean, what's this stuff made of? Kryptonite or something? Something.
As long as I can. I was just going to say. As long as I can borrow your 9-mile screwdriver. No, I'm kidding.
Well, look at it this way. They've already pre-programmed everyone to immediately, when they hear somebody like Lawrence say, maybe we need to question all of this stuff, okay? They've already pre-programmed everyone. Lawrence is a conspiracy theorist. He won't believe anything anybody tells him, no matter what. That's Lawrence, okay? Now they're doing the same thing with flat Earth. They're already using the word gullible multiple times. I've been counting. I've been watching. I've got my Google alerts going. They keep using the word gullible, flat earthers, okay? These are conspiracy theorists who don't believe anything anyway, okay? And so when someone says that the opposite of whatever it is that the mainstream teaches you, they will believe it because they're gullible flat earthers, okay? So they've got it set up you know, and again, just when you use the word they, you automatically sound like who they're talking about. They. But there is a coordinated effort to make flat earthers look crazy, stupid, and now gullible. And the only way to prevent that from becoming true and being shown to be true is that we aren't gullible. That when someone comes on and says, sorry to belabor it, but someone comes on and says there's no Greenland, I'm not going to be gullible and just go, nice video, okay? Because you said a lot of double talk and made it sound like you know what you're talking about. This has to be prevented because that's gullible. If I had been a normal sheeple mind and I would have heard this video and I would have thought, huh, well, will you look at that? There's no Greenland. And not gone online and not Googled anything and not pursued it, I may have 2 weeks from now been talking to someone and go, yeah, do you know that the Antarctica is actually on the top and the Arctic's on the bottom, and maybe there's not even an Arctic after all, but did you know Greenland doesn't even exist? Or actually Greenland could actually be Australia? And then someone goes, huh? What are you talking about? And they've been to Greenland, like on a cruise, for example? I mean, there you go. Where did you hear that from? Oh, I saw it on a YouTube video. Gullible. And you know, I mean, I rest my case on that because that's where things will go if we are not diligent about checking each other's work. Okay? Imagine, if you will, you're in a classroom in the 6th grade. And somebody comes in and says, hey, I copied the teacher's test and I looked up all the answers and I put them all on here. If you give me a quarter, I'll give you this cheat sheet and you can have this and you can put it under your lap or whatever and answer. You'll have all the questions to all the tests. Okay, I'm going to go, quarter, cool, because I didn't study. I was up watching TV all night. Okay, and then everybody in the classroom gives this person a quarter, and everybody has the same cheat sheet, and we're all wrong, all the same answers, because this person felt like punking you, or this person just felt like making like $20 or whatever. And pumped it and got everybody to go for it. And then the next day, the teacher comes back in from grading all the tests and goes, all right, so you all cheated. You all have the same answers and they're wrong. Okay, so who's the culprit here? And then everybody's going, not me, right?
It was Mark Sargent. I'm just kidding.
Oh, you're going to hell for that. So,
no, I was only kidding. I really
I know. It's okay to kid. It's really okay to kid. That's the other thing. If we can't kid around, you know, I mean, I have people making videos about me all the time. And I'm not kidding. I'm not. I listened to one about me, a week ago. Kristen heard it too. And they talked about me for an hour. And they talked about Kristen too. But that's okay. And I'm not supposed to care, and I'm not supposed to get my feelings hurt or get mad or anything. I'm just supposed to either disappear, which is probably what they would prefer, or fight back in some silly way, which I'm not going to. But the whole idea is that if I say something stupid, believe me, people call me out in the comments. Go read them. When this video's done, and the comments are allowed, because they're not allowed until the video's part of the way through or finished. You'll see. I mean, I get called everything there is, and then there's some real nice people who say great show. the Morgul's awesome. They either love or don't love Lawrence, which is, fun because he's like that on people. And the same thing with Kristen. They'll say nice things or mean things. And I read them. I'm unlike Mark Sargent. I actually read as many of the comments as I can, and I try to answer as many of them as I can. I don't get involved in the ones where the people are talking to each other, answering each other back and forth, calling each other idiots, whatever. So, but if nothing else, if this show is not about anything else today, it should be about the responsibility we have to the movement, to the community, to the world, to each other, about trying to be as honest and truthful as we can in our efforts and our claims. And this is why way back in May of last year, or I think it was, that I called out Mark Sargent when he came out about the enclosed world. I was one of the first people that took a lot of heat for calling him out because he was the rock star clue maker at that point. And I said, this guy's a gatekeeper because he's intending to rally all the people he can behind his Truman Show dome enclosed world. And I said the same thing but different when Dubé came out with all of his anti-Jew bashing revisionist stuff. He's completely entitled to believe whatever he wants and whatever, but I'm not on board with that. So he doesn't represent me as far as a flat Earth spokesman.
Yeah. Well, so many people will just automatically associate you with the only flat earther they've researched, because that's what most people will do. They'll watch a few videos. They'll say, "Well, I researched it, and this, that, and the other about this guy or that guy, and it's debunked. It's stupid. These people are gullible." But they never actually did the research, though. That's my point.
Exactly, that's not something that you can do in 12 hours or a few days. That if you really are dedicated to researching the flat Earth and understanding the premise and the philosophy and the proofs, then it takes at least a week, if not a month, to really understand it and to cull through the garbage and listen to the real story about flat Earth. So, okay, we have less than a half an hour, and I would like for you guys to explain how you go about properly doing research, because you're all researchers. I want you to be Research 101, and I want you to explain how you do research on pick a topic or topics in general. And John, I'll start with you.
Yeah, well, the first thing I do, and really especially like when I was coming over the fence on this topic, was look at the physical evidence. That's where I always start with my research, is physical evidence. What do we know for sure? What is an assumption? If you find something that seems to make sense and it seems to be verified with your past experiences, double check it, triple check it. Everybody, even I'm guilty of this, especially when we come onto a revelation like flat Earth, is it's very easy to get sidetracked and sort of misled by information that may or may not be either 100% true or at least 100% verifiable, or if we're following the scientific method, it may or may not be falsifiable. And so I really try to stick with stuff like that. And if I'm going to theorize, I love to theorize. It's a lot of fun. Like Kristen said, it's neat to think about that sort of thing like a dome, but so much of this stuff is just not anything we're really probably going to know anytime soon. And if we can just sort of stick with the physical evidence, stick with the physics, stick with the math, the science, poke holes into the conventional arguments. That's sort of my main approach to all this is sort of taking the globe to trial, because it's a big fat lie. And if something isn't true, then it can be proven false. If something is the truth, you cannot prove it false. So we really do have a pretty sweet position here. It's just the blind criticism that we have to deal with. And really the only thing that I know that the globe has going for it is ignorance. And so let's try not to bring that with us to the flat Earth. That's sort of my long and short of it.
Good. Kristen.
Well, I think there's been certain threads of the research that have just compelled me more than others, like many of us would say, I think. And for me, it's been in some ways the basics. Of course, I harp on the curvature because that is the number one thing, right? And then there's the other things that got me from day one, like I've touched on the Coriolis effect being that first point that I needed to figure out how to gather information and facts and understanding about to come to some conclusion, hopefully sooner than later, how that could mechanically, or so to speak, not in a mechanical system, but just how it could work physically in this reality without, aside from the explanation science gave us that doesn't work, obviously. So we have to, for me, just I think stick with those basics. I keep saying that, I know, but it, there's all these other things. But my goodness, if we just are trying to help this cause, my research has been based in making this kind of introductory, keeping it relatively introductory. But I have had to hit some other points. Starting the community page about 3 months into my research, when I was convinced I needed to do something, and that's the most comfortable place I could start my different ideas of outreach, just most easily and quickly, let's put it that way too. It just became necessary, if I wanted to reach new people, to stick with the more introductory points. And at the same time, it comes back to that all the time, where that is where we can make the strongest argument if our mission, which mine is to just reach the critical mass, because I feel like that is the immediate goal. Isn't that the real point here? I hoped, and I thought that was, it seemed all about this, finally we can have this real foothold in a tangible awakening that now many, many more people can grab onto, not just people who consider themselves very spiritual or very highly conscious or whatever else. And that's, certainly some of us came to this earlier than others, and some people conjecture that has to do with our level of consciousness. I don't know that I completely agree, but I don't disagree. There might be really something to that. And I can see why they would think that, for sure, but I just take the research really as a thing of what comes along next in an organic sense that inspires me to have to dig in deeper. And over the months, it became an early thing for me to try to figure out if it's really true we're on the circle, because of how many implications there are even with that. That's a big dramatic change from us being on a sphere, us being on a circle, and making that equator line have to be a circle. And this is actually a point I wanted to touch on earlier, as I've long considered, even though I didn't delve into the flights proof for the flat Earth myself, researching it myself, I struck upon a thought not that long ago, maybe 2-3 months ago, thinking, well, maybe one reason there's not as many long-haul flights is that pilots might catch on, if we're indeed on a circle, wouldn't they catch on that they'd have to kind of keep bearing bearing to the right as they're going east, if I'm saying that right, or west, pardon me. Yeah, and so I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but
No, you are. Yeah, it's right if they're going west. They're going west.
Thank you. So, wouldn't they realize they're bearing to one direction or the other if they're traveling on a circle? Because it doesn't seem like our area of continents is that big. If we're just looking at that same circumference ball and kind of spreading it out flat. I mean, it's not a huge plane, our area that we inhabit, unless that math is all wrong, unless that square footage is all wrong. I don't know. There is that, but that possibility. But you know what I'm saying? It would seem like that might be a question, how maybe they avoid those flights being direct east to west or too long of a haul because of that possibility, if we could be on a circle. And the other thing is, you know, I just was looking for any other proof we could be on a circle all these months, and that's what led me to be so interested in the conversation, in part about the map, when Lawrence brought up key points that point to it's, you know, really suspect as not necessarily being viable in reality. And so we're still trying to knock out these points, aren't we? I wanted to talk about the analemma this week. It's just it didn't feel right to get into it earlier, and I wondered that we might have a better place for it later on. And that is still a stumbling point, because it was one of the only proofs I thought that we had, maybe indicating a circular arrangement with the north in the center, and being that apparent loop, because it appears as a figure eight. But I want to point out to people that I don't, upon further investigation, I don't believe it's a figure eight. I believe it's a wavy circle that creates an optical illusion that it's overlapping and appearing as a figure eight.
Santos Bonacci said that the sun gathers souls, but it's in. So there you go. That's the analemma for you.
Say it again, John, because you were feeding back.
Sorry, no, I just said that Santos Bonacci theory is that the sun gathers souls on its route down Capricorn, and then it spits out souls when it gets to Cancer. So maybe I have that backwards, but that's what supposedly explains the analemma in his model. So not that I subscribe to that, but I was just throwing that out there.
Okay. I shall not propose to be able to comment on that today,
well,
but
we'll promise to talk about analemmas next week.
Yes, that'd be great.
We'll let you lead off on that, since you've been researching that more.
Okay, great, because there is still a quandary that may or may not point to there's something, you know, to support a potential for a circular path. But I'm right now feeling like the analemma doesn't conclusively tell us anything about the sun's general path, be it a circular or a straight path, that being the general aspect. It only tells us really kind of about this longitudinal and latitudinal shift that it's making daily and weekly. Sometimes they photograph it daily, sometimes weekly throughout the year. And it's, you know, that's not really going to tell us much about necessarily what we're really after. Is, can it tell us something about that general path? And a lot of flat earthers already believe that it does. They pretty much believe that apparent smaller loop I started to mention in the top, or the north, is indicating that smaller circuit of the sun in the north that we would expect on the circle, right? That would have to be the case on the circle. So just to wrap it up there, so that I can at least explain where I was leading to with that, and we can certainly go into depth later and see what everybody thinks about it, and hopefully I can do more to try to confirm if it's true, that whether it's photographed, you know, from the southern hemisphere or the northern hemisphere, we're indeed always seeing that smaller end of the one main loop that it is, this wavy loop in the north. And if that's the case, well, that's where this dilemma still haunts us about why is that north end of the loop different than the south. It's not following the normal rules of perspective, in other words, so we can't write it off as a perspective thing.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and you know, my thing about the analemma is I always had an issue. I mean, I never really thought this through, but and especially as a flat earther, I have an issue with people assuming that the analemma is only possible on a globe. Because I can really easily see, just like you said, to me it's indicative of the northern circuit being shorter in circumference than the southern. But only possible on a globe? No, there's lots of ways you could have that analemma be produced without a globe. That's my whole thing on it. It's not.
Yeah, I've checked it out, John. I've actually plotted the analemma on a flat map. I went into time and date and got the position of the sun on the 21st of June on the 12 for the 12 months of the year and plotted it out, and it does bring up the analemma, but it's not very big. It only deviates by 3 degrees of longitude to the east or the west on whatever path it is. So it's a very narrow analemma. I'm not too sure what the fuss about it all is.
Yeah, because it's one of those things that astronomers studied, and they're like, wow, this is interesting. If you look at the sun every day, at the same time, at the same place every day for a year, it makes a figure-8 pattern.
It's just a slight variation, though, isn't it, of where it is in the sky? That's all it is, and it creates that figure-8 type thing over the course of a year. So yes. I'm not too sure what the fuss about it is. I mean, I go off the instincts on stuff. Anyway, that's how I got into flat Earth. It was just nobody told me about it, and the thought just came into my head, and I thought I'm going to look into it. For some obscure reason, the thoughts come into your head. And this Mandela effect that's come in recently, that I've never heard the term. Excuse me. But let me ask you a question. I mean, because I see these things now, and this thing comes into my head. I'm thinking, what is this? I've never heard of that before, but I keep seeing it everywhere. I mean, how many of you have heard of the Federated States of Micronesia? Have you heard of it, Laurie?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah?
No.
Federated States of Micronesia, and it's got all these funny shapes around it over Papua New Guinea. It's near the equator, and it's by the international date line. And the United States have... they've got some say in what's going on there. Is that some kind of Bermuda Triangle area where strange things are going on? It just, because I've never heard of it before. And I picked up this map here, this Mercator map, and you look over on this right-hand side, and you've got the international date line, and you've got all these little things all boxed off. There's nothing else boxed off on the other islands, on other parts. But these have all got these, these 4- and 5-sided boxes separating them all off, and I'm trying to figure, what are these places? What's going on there?
Well, okay, so that's a perfect lead-in for you to describe to someone how you will go how you will go about researching that. What will the steps be that you will take to learn about that? That's what research is, the learning about stuff you didn't know about before with an open mind.
Well, you look into it.
What steps will you take?
You just obviously do searches on it and look at all the links that come in and see where it takes you. But when you tend to do that and you go off on a jag, as Mark Sargent would say, and you're sort of moving, you think you're moving into a subject at random, but there's usually some. There's some divine thing about it that it's going to take you somewhere, and you think, I don't know why the hell I'm looking at this, but I'm sure something may come out of it, and that's how we tend to learn things. It's just curiosity because it's something new and you haven't looked at it before. So you just something in this little gnawing thought in your brain says, I'm going to dig deeper into this and see where it takes me.
Okay.
Which is why we're all here now.
Right. Well, okay.
Curiosity.
For example,
we're curious about how things work, where we are, and what's going on. Right. Because they're not going to tell us. It's down to us to find out.
So, as a researcher, a lot of people, they're not interested in researching anything. By the time they get done doing their job and doing the dishes and throwing in a load of laundry and walking the dog, they're ready to sit down and watch another episode of my favorite show. So, those of us who aren't interested in doing that as our form of entertainment look at research as our entertainment, but it's a mental entertainment to the degree that if you hear about something, like you always start out with research with what question mark, and whatever it is that captured your curiosity. You can liken yourself to a little kid who's the first time they ever got out of the playpen and they're crawling down the hallway and they see a box at the end of the hallway. They're going to keep crawling until they get to it, and they're going to sit down and try to open the box and see what's inside of it, because that's human curiosity. So where becomes the next thing. where is this going to go, or where do I want to go to find out an answer? So you're going to crawl down the hallway toward the box. On the way down the hallway, you pass a plug outlet, on the wall, and you go, well, that's interesting. And of course, you might stick your finger in it, but or mom starts yelling at you, and then you're back down the hallway looking toward the box. What you're looking for, how are you going to find it? So you start looking at links, you start looking at Googling terms, words. What I've learned to do is I literally ask a question that I want an answer to. I put in all the words, I write out the question just like I'm asking the question man, the Wizard of Oz. And in my search terms of literally asking the question and putting a question mark at the end of it even, somebody's probably asked that question before, but all of the keywords that you put in the question are going to end up in the search of what Google or whoever is going to supply you with. Then you start looking at people who say different things, which means different bloggers, different websites, different wiki type, people, experts, colleges, whatever. You collect all the information you can on this topic. All the while, you have to be open-minded that this could be a lie, and this could be a rabbit trail. They're trying to take me down and teach me something wrong, or this could be where they're trying to give me disinfo to make me think a certain way. Oh, and this is the fear porn department over here who's going to try and scare the crap out of me so that I won't go there anymore. And then when you're done with all of that, you have to ask why. Why am I looking for this? And then when you find out what you're looking for, you have to kind of ask yourself, who benefits from this information? Am I benefiting from this information? Is somebody benefiting from putting this information here for me to find and other people to find? And I want to find the information that is unbiased. So I'm going to try to figure out why this organization put this information here. It's a long process, but as you do it for years or even for months, you learn a simple process that you can follow to get the answers to what you want. Now it's up to you as a researcher to either bookmark what you find or keep yourself a notebook or a log of what you find so that you can go back and find it later. If you haven't been accustomed to using bookmarks in the past, start folders in your bookmarks. That's the little star up in the corner of your search engine. That when you click on that star, it'll give you the option to put it in the bookmarks across the top or a folder. If I'm being a little too 101 for some people, well then my apologies. But some people will benefit from this information because I've lost things before that it took me sub going under and under and under links to get to it. And then if you don't bookmark it or remember some of the keywords that you use to find it, or if you clear your history, your cache of your history, you will lose it. So that's how I research. So when someone makes a claim and it tweaks something in my brain that goes wah, 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 then I'm going to go and research it because I want to protect the boundaries of the purity of flat Earth at this point. And if that makes me a control freak, I'm only controlling myself. I'm not controlling anybody else. I don't have the ability to control anybody else. But if I can put out a warning, which is what we've attempted to do tonight, to prevent someone from just gullibly believing something because someone sounds confident, sounds like they've researched it, research it anyway. It doesn't matter because you may arrive at the same thing, but you may not. And if you don't, then you may do what we're doing. You may call somebody out and say, I'm sorry, but that's just not right. So anybody have a last few words?
Oh, we're right at 6 o'clock. Are we running over?
No, we're at 9. Yeah, we're at 3 hours, so we got to go. Okay, well, thank you guys once again for coming on, and I, appreciate your efforts and your time. And look up Jonathan the Morgall channel. Follow Kristen on, what's the name of the thing again? Your page?
The Flat Earth Inquiry Show.
The Flat Earth Inquiry Show. And Lawrence has Lawrence Wright channel. Okay. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next
night, y'all. Good to see y'all again.
week.
Thanks, you too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.